And welcome!
My God.
Welcome to Heavy Hands. It's the Handies. And you can tell my high, and as high as it is, it's also an authentic energy that I'm bringing to this introduction right now. You can tell how excited I am for the 2020 Handies. I'm Connor Rebush, your host, joined, as always, by the beautiful, the charming Philip McKenzie. Phil, how are you?
Fantastic to be here.
It's an
honor.
Stop, we can't, it's an award show, we can't talk over each other like we normally do.
I was just saying it's an honor to be here, Connor.
You have to wait for the pause, is what I was going to say, and then... okay. Welcome, one and all, to the 2020 Handies. Phil, we had a long, slow tease leading up to this point, didn't we? Last week's episode was really probably one of the most titillating episodes we've ever done. Just building up fervor and excitement for the actual, deed, which is this, the Handies. And we are about to consummate probably one of the craziest, most insane years in the history of this podcast, covering the sport of MMA. And certainly one of the craziest things going on for us is that we got suggested about 1 billion different awards from all of the kind and even the unkind people on Twitter. So we have a bunch of new categories for you guys this year. Which is why we had to, run through all of the basically runoff suggested categories last week. We have even more of those. We have our generic boring awards. I think we've winnowed that category down to 4, which that used to be way bigger. But we've sort of figured out what this is really about over the years. We've, of course, got many returning favorite awards, ones that you will remember well, like, for example, the Patrick Wyman Memorial Award for Explosive Muscularity, one of my personal favorites. And we've got our novel, interesting strategy awards, in which we talk about fighting technique and its successful or unsuccessful application. So I'm pretty excited about this, Phil. We're getting a late start today, but I have now successfully geared myself up. I took 3 Adderall. I'm ready to go.
Well, and I think with all the preparation we've done, there's absolutely no way we're going to make any horrific absences in this particular award set. There's no chance that we're going to rush through things and just miss stuff out, or that we're each working from a dock with giant gaps in it or anything like that. This is, I think, most well-prepared Handies we've ever delivered to our audience.
I mean, we do have a lot of options here. I think we can succeed on the strength. Like maybe the cumin is like 8 years old. It's not super fresh, right? Maybe the turmeric is like we don't have the appropriate amount that we need, or maybe it's a little more bitter than we would like. But we got about 1 million ingredients here, and at the end, we're still going to have a curry, right?
Well, yes.
Wow, I can't believe you went along with that metaphor without a fight. Okay, well, let's get started, folks. We thought long and hard about the order in which to run through these much celebrated MMA awards to celebrate a terrible fucking year. And we decided that, we may as well get the stupid shit out of the way first. Generic boring awards. We have to do some of them. Specifically, we have to do the first one that I'm about to mention because it includes one of our favorite fighters, both of us, me and Phil. And otherwise includes mostly stuff you're going to have picked on every other podcast you listen to and every other website. So now get excited for that thing I just unsold you on as we move on to Fighter of the Year. Phil, would you please do me the honor of reading the nominees for Fighter of the Year?
So, for Fighter of the Year, we have our nominees, Kevin Holland, Khamzat Chimaev.
You know what? That's fine. I think we did them all. There was one more. Okay.
And what's his face? Little guy, Davison Figueiredo.
Yes, David's son, Figueiredo. I mean, I think the only reason we included this category, at least in my mind, was because Kevin Holland is like a worthy contender. Like, he really is. This isn't even one of the joke submissions or nominations, because he had what, 5 fights, and I think the last 7 or 8 months. It wasn't even the whole year, because he didn't have any bookings through March or April. He has basically been putting on nothing but stellar performances. Even his one fight that he didn't win was the draw. Was that a draw, or did he get the win? He did get the win, actually, right? Over Darren Stewart.
Yeah. It wasn't a 10-8.
Could have easily been a draw. Probably should have been. Was still a very exciting, entertaining fight. And he capped that all off by coming in on super short notice and knocking out Jacare Souza from his back with a breakdancing move. So to me, that is like frontrunner fighter of the year. What was that second name you mentioned?
Khamzat Chimaev.
Never heard of him.
Yep.
You know, don't care. Not impressed. To be honest, like I think he's like, if we were to be so boring on this show as to do a breakout fighter of the year category, then we would do Khamzat Chimaev. But I think to be fighter of the year, you have to like beat someone. For me personally,
you shock and appall me.
I mean, I'm sure I'm the only person out there with this opinion, right? Certainly not all of the vaping scooter kids who have been like fighting a crusade of vicarious rage for Leon Edwards. I literally forgot his name, which they will appreciate. Have been fighting a crusade for Leon Edwards' sake, because Khamzat Chimaev has had the gall to be favored, I think, over him in their matchup that is quickly becoming a Khabib Ferguson style pair. So anyway, I think it's and then you got Davison Figueiredo, who murdered an old man and then had a fight that was like the flyweight equivalent of Whittaker Romero, but I think we'll agree was not in fact Whittaker Romero. Not quite.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are other people we could include. Like there's Israel Adesanya, who technically beat Yoel Romero and also beat up Paulo Costa. In the end, kind of does have to be Figueiredo, doesn't it?
I kind of think it has to be Kevin Holland, actually. I don't really see why it has to be Figueiredo. He's only had the 2. One over, I don't know, like, has Figueiredo had 5 fights this year, Phil? I mean, make that argument.
Well, he's had 4. One might argue.
Yeah, but 2 were against the same corpse.
His level of competition overall might have been a touch higher.
Well, one was against the corpse of a guy he'd already eaten, mostly. He just finished off the scraps. Okay. I guess it does. I mean,
it kind of has to be, unfortunately.
We had to include it, though, because Kevin Holland is a really viable contender, right? He's still.
This is the thing. I was thinking about it. He gets robbed every year for laugh out loud, like pure entertainment fighter of the year. He never actually wins it.
Oh yeah.
It seems so bitter that he's like now in the running for fighter of the year and gets picked to the post for that one as well.
Yeah, of course. That's why you feel the need, with your blackened soul, to really make sure he doesn't win. We could have put our thumbs on the scale, Phil.
I know.
No one cares. But like,
I just want people to know that we're like honest, thoughtful people who will give our best possible, our best possible interpretations of things.
We will think through each award fully, consider all of the options. Anyway, KO of the year. Phil, you've just written "come on now" under this. suggested nominees. It's Joaquin Buckley. This is a quick hit. We do not have to discuss other options. There were some cool KOs. Frankly, like if Joaquin Buckley didn't have that, I might suggest, not just because I love the man, Kevin Holland's KO of Joaquin Buckley, which I think is very aesthetically pleasing. That's a great knockout.
Yeah. Well, I would personally have suggested Kevin Holland's KO of Jacare Ramos.
Wow.
It was completely fucking insane.
He once again has two clear candidates for this category, and yet Joaquin Buckley did a spinning back kick to a dude's face and knocked him out instantaneously, and then he had a perfect 2.5 second fall plummet to the floor, and it was basically everything you would like to see as a follow-up to one of the most spectacular, technically one of the most spectacular knockouts we've ever seen. So obvious choice. It has to be that. Well, we're moving on to submission of the year, Phil.
And once again, I don't think we need to go very deep into this. It is Antonio McKee's crazy McKeeatine submission.
Yeah, Antonio McKee Jr., of course. AJ McKee.
Yes, of course.
I can't ever remember what the hell he goes by. Is it AJ McKee? Is it Antonio McKee Jr.?
He's AJ.
I think it's AJ. Yeah, that was super cool. One of the most, did we mention it on the show when it happened? I feel like we did, but, we're so bad about covering non-UFC fight events.
I don't think we actually did.
Yeah. Well, for those who don't know, Antonio McKee Jr., son of UFC veteran Antonio McKee, who I think we tried to watch on a Depressed Us once.
We really tried to find his fight with Jacob Volkman, which unfortunately is cleansed from Fight Pass.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Because it's apparently so bad, we don't even get to make fun of it. AJ McKee had a fight with Darian Caldwell. It was at Bellator at 253, and he finished this bout with what he termed McKeeatine, which if we had a separate award category for best at naming novel submissions, we would have to include Demetrius Johnson in there, even though his mighty whiz bar or whatever he called it was 3 years ago. Just to mention that AJ McKee is 1,000,000 times better at coming up with submission names than he is. Because McKeeatine is a really good catchy name for a submission. And it's like a chancery neck crank. It's in a guillotine position, but there is no arm across the throat. Instead, it's like a full Nelson, where you wrap the back of the arm over the head and leverage under the armpit with a locked gable grip. Very weird guard submission and super cool. And I don't think it looks like the kind of thing that could only work for AJ McKee. You've never seen it, but once you see it, you can kind of see other MMA fighters getting their ways to that position and making it work. So it could be genuinely sort of a novel move that other people get to try, but it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and this wasn't a fantastic. There were a lot of candidates for knockouts this year. It wasn't a fantastic year for submissions. Obviously, they were there for being against surprising competition, but there was a whole bunch of just naked chokes and guillotines and not a whole lot jumping out apart from obviously Maurice Green also with an incredible submission from his back. But
we'll get a chance to talk about that, I think, more than once later in the awards show. Yeah, there was, for honorable mentions, I mean, Jack Hermanson got an instant heel hook, which is pretty cool for a main event style fight. Thiago Boinches submitted Michael Johnson with a straight ankle lock, which for sheer novelty is interesting. We never see straight ankle locks, even though they are a very effective submission. For whatever reason, people just don't seem to know how to do them very well in MMA.
Also did feel like there was a slight element of cheating this year with people hitting their swaggy submissions on Michael Johnson and Darian Caldwell respectively.
Yeah, people who love getting submitted. Yeah. It's sort of like having it's sort of like Jimmy Flick is the last person I would mention who just had a flying triangle over Cody Durden. That was really impressive. And it's like if Jimmy Flick hit that flying triangle on the flyweight equivalent of like Chael Sonnen.
Mm-hmm.
That does stain it a little bit, right? Because if anyone's going to get flying triangled, it's good old Chael. Oh yeah, and Ariane Lipski did a horrific knee inverting submission of Luana Carolina with a knee bar, another uncommon. So there were some good leg locks. I mean, I'll give them that. It was kind of a leg lock heavy year in the UFC, to be honest. And yet, none of them as impressive as the McKeown. Okay, finally, we come to the final generic boring award category. And this one I always tend to enjoy because it gives us a chance, even when we mostly stick to UFC bouts, to sneak in ones that I think a lot of people have already forgotten. Because it is a sad case that every single year, there are really tons of great fights, of like really great fights, that just sort of get buried. And I don't celebrate these fights very much before they happen, because I rarely know they're going to be as great as they are. After they happen, they just don't get as much shine because, well, for the same reason, essentially, that I don't celebrate them before the fact, there's just no stakes for a lot of these. A lot of these are prelim fights, they're undercard fights, and yet there are many fights every year where you can go back and rewatch them 10 times and never get bored. That they're just sensational fights. And I think we had quite a few of those this year. This was the year of like people shockingly overperforming despite dire circumstances, or perhaps because of them. And I think that really showed up in a lot of like weird, short notice, undercard thrillers on the UFC schedule this year. So Phil, I'm going to once again throw it to you and ask you to read our nominees for Fight of the Year.
Are we going to? Do you want me to add in the sarcastic addendums I have put next to these?
Please,
or
absolutely,
should I just?
Absolutely, please do. And then we'll try to figure out what you're talking about as we go.
Okay. So firstly, we have Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Weili Zhang, which I've put the logical choice next to.
Sort of. Imagine if that was written in the nominees envelopes at the Oscars. Like, duh, written next to Moonlight.
Then I put Dustin Poirier's third, probably fourth best fight.
Yeah.
Holloway Volkanovski 2. Ooh, it's a chess match.
I didn't see that one until just now.
That one flyweight fight where one of them stopped fighting in the last round.
We all know the one.
Which I believe is Moreno Figueiredo.
Pretty sure that's what you're talking about.
Jan versus Aldo, ha ha ha. Kai Kamaka the third versus Tony Kelly. Bill Algeo versus Ricardo Lamas. And one of my personal favorites, Nathaniel Wood, Casey Kenny.
Oh, yeah. So those last three, I think, really are the reason to continue doing this generic boring award. Like, I think a lot of people forgot about Kai Kamaka versus Tony Kelly because, like, why would you remember it other than the fact that it was a fucking awesome fight? So let's go ahead and run through those top ones first, because I do think they are going to probably be some of our top contenders. Joanna Weili, the logical choice. I want you to explain Dustin Poirier's nomination, Phil. What do you mean by Dustin Poirier's third, probably fourth best fight?
I mean, it seems a little...
It's unfair, because...
Yeah, some people are just, action machines.
Yeah.
But it seems a little like Poirier Hooker is a fantastic fight, but you can find... It's probably Dan Hooker's best fight, but like I said, it's not even top three for Dustin Poirier. Whichever way you want to order them, that would be the Korean Zombie fight, would be Eddie Alvarez, and it would be Justin Gaethje.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Korean Zombie,
maybe because are a bit less competitive. I mean, maybe because the Alvarez fights are less competitive than Hooker. It's less of a I still think it's an uglier fight than the Alvarez fight.
I agree.
So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to have someone be like, "This is the fight of the year," but it's not even your like second best fight.
It does.
I mean, there are people like that.
It does feel a little unfair, but it would be sort of like if we had like a Justin Gaethje fight as a top candidate. Which weirdly this year, I mean, I guess we could have put his fight with Khabib, though it was short. It was fucking insane. But it would be like if we included a Gaethje fight and it was like his fight with Gillard. Like, it was good. But for Justin Gaethje, it wasn't the most amazing action fight he's ever had. So, anyway. What was our next one? Oh, yeah. Holloway Volkanovski 2. Ooh, it's a chess match, you wrote. What do you mean by that?
So I think this is where it really comes down to it. Because I think this is a genuinely interesting category, not just for like offering dark horse candidates.
I agree.
So I think there's two real candidates you can go for this year. And I think, and they are very divergent in what you are looking for. Because one of them is incredibly clever and technical.
Yeah.
And the other one is absolutely horrific.
Yeah. Question is this?
I mean, I think there's.
Go on.
I mean, there's a solid argument. Like Holloway Volkanovski 2 is the smartest, most strategic MMA fight we've ever seen.
Ever, yeah.
And meanwhile, like Joanna Whaley, as I said, you know, when we first recapped this fight, it's just a constant drumbeat of violence that just doesn't stop from beginning to end.
Yeah, it is it's a real Fury Road style fight, and well, I probably shouldn't make so many movie comparisons, but I do this every time because it's the Oscars in my mind, and that's the stupid music that I added in, which is probably, I don't know, if I put a marker down, it's playing right now, and if I didn't, then I'm currently talking over dead silence, which might be funnier editing decisions to make. Yeah, it's sort of the question to me is, are we going to be is this going to be one of those years where we have Return of the King, you know, win the award, or is it going to be a year where Parasite wins? And to me, Holloway Volkanovski is Parasite, and I'm going to upset a lot of nerds out there, including myself. But Parasite's a better movie than Return of the King. Like, it's smarter. It has like a more interesting like thematic content to deliver to you. It makes you think after it's done, which you really don't do that much with something like Return of the King. But also, I fucking love Return of the King. And I think that whole trilogy is awesome. And I will watch the extended editions. And if Ioana versus Weili Zhang was also 4.5 hours long, I would watch all of that too. Because it was just that entertaining. So I do think it's a genuinely compelling category. And presumably whichever one we pick says a lot about our intellectual tastes, Phil.
So like, I think I tend to prize horror a lot when I'm picking like my favorite fights. Not necessarily my favorite fights, just that I think the most dramatic and compelling fights are the ones where people have to go to like a very deep, dark place.
Sure. The
ones where people have to sort of leave something behind.
Yeah.
I think those are the, because like to award them with something like Fight of the Year at the end of it seems incredibly sort of gauche in a way, but in another way, it's the only thing you can really do.
Yeah, it's like when it's like when the stuntman breaks his leg, they put that take in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, so like it's like the least we can do is honor the fact that probably one or both of the people in this fight were irrevocably changed, and I can feel which direction you're going in.
Yeah, because as much as I love Holloway Volkanovski as an incredible intellectual experience, I didn't really feel like it. I didn't really feel like it was as far as man could push himself.
God, no.
I feel like they were constantly trying to outthink the other guy.
Yes,
but they weren't really like going. This wasn't Max Holloway going as deep as Max Holloway could go, or
Holloway
for that matter, Volkanovski going as deep as he could go.
Yeah.
Whereas with Joanna Whaley, I did feel like it was the two of them getting as like down into their reserves of willpower as it was humanly possible for them to go.
Yeah. And it was equally impressive in different ways. Like they were sort of perfect foils because for Joanna, like we have seen her have hard fights like this. And we've seen her like drift away from the title, which she held so dominantly. And it gives you this feeling like she's supposed to not be capable of doing this much longer. But she, once again, like that backstory, I think adds weight to the fact that she can still do that for 5 rounds. And Weili Zhang was a serious proving moment. I mean, even like we're coming up with all these arguments. Let's just say straight up, once again, one of the best fights ever for just pure action. And Weili Zhang is like young, relatively inexperienced, at least against high level competition, the way Joanna is, and proved that she could put on one of the best fights ever against probably the best fighter in her division's history. So yeah,
I mean, it was one of those fights where, one of them, there was no reason to assume she could do that because she was too young.
Right.
And the other one, there was no reason to assume she could do that because she'd been doing things like that for so long that you would assume that she didn't have that in her anymore.
Right.
It became this kind of interplay of, a hideously mutilated Jędrzejczyk, kind of constantly storming after Zhang. And again, something that I think even just, Jędrzejczyk coming and refusing to be broken would have broken a lot of lesser fighters than Weili Zhang.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just seeing this kind of revenant coming for you. So I mean, there's a lot of things you could say about, it was only possible for that kind of thing to happen because, Joanna doesn't have the punching form of people in other divisions. It's only because, striking isn't as developed in this division or anything like that. But as I said, after that event, after we recapped it, it was it filled the capabilities of that division. It was what MMA could offer at this point in this division, and I think they went as far into it as they possibly could.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the reasons why I prize like these really dark, brutal fights.
Yeah, I mean,
that technique will always evolve over time. People will always be able to look back at your favorite fight. They'll look back at it years from now and they'll be like, oh, look at this guy. He was out of position here. Yeah. By the technical standards of today, he looks like trash. Mm-hmm. But the one thing you can never take away is like that kind of just raw heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very good case. And it's like a Lawler McDonald too. Like it's that kind of feeling like you have to honor it. And as like ironically detached as we tend to be on this show, like we can both agree, every fight fan I think can agree that like fighting at its best is weirdly transcendent in a way that you really only get in like brief flashes of emotion with really, really great movies, and really great stories. Like it really does pick you up and just carry you along when it's really great. And make you feel things. And yeah, this is for all of the reasons you just beautifully laid out. I think it's a clear candidate, as you said, the logical choice, but also the emotional choice. Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Weili Zhang for Fight of the Year. Just want to give a final bit of shine. Again, Kai Kamaka versus Tony Kelly. If you forgot about that one already, and I wouldn't blame you, watch it again. Bill Algeo versus Ricardo Lamas. Probably less chance you forgot about that because you know Ricardo Lamas, but you may have, and you should watch it. That fight is awesome. And Nathaniel Wood versus Casey Kenny. Why is that your personal favorite of the crop, Phil?
Again, it was just like one of these ones where it just maintained like a super high pace. I mean, it didn't have a chance to go to the kind of the dark, like the sort of dark places that Joanna Whaley clearly went to.
Yeah.
But it was another one where I kept expecting one of them to break.
With a fourth and fifth round, it may have gone that far. I mean, it was that level of action.
Yeah. And just like great, like it's just an all-round great MMA fight as well. Yeah. A lot of these tend to be like very striking dominated. But, you know, this was like had the clinch and wrestling and just went everywhere and just, again, hyper fast paced, totally action packed start to end. Can't recommend it highly enough.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on to our second most serious selection of awards. That's right, folks, we are heading headlong into the strategy section of today's schedule, in which we talk about fighters' game plans or lack thereof. We insult fighters' brains and various other topics. Let's go ahead and dive in with the Best Game Plan of the Year award. I found this to be a pretty hot category this year, actually, Phil. I think we're going to have a little bit of a time deciding between these. And please, of course, if any jump to your mind while I'm reading these, feel free to suggest them. This isn't the real Oscars. But here are our nominees for Best Game Plan of 2020. Jose Aldo beating Chito Vera. Justin Gaethje absolutely taking Tony Ferguson apart. Expert performance there. Drew Dober instantly murdering Nasrat Haqparast. Aljamain Sterling instantly tapping Corey Sandhagen. Merab Dvalishvili shockingly intelligently shutting down John Dodson. Sijara Eubanks exposing Julia Avila's faults. One a lot of people will have forgotten, but probably one of the bigger underdog wins of the year. Bilal Muhammad beating Lyman Good. Always an expert game planner, Bilal Muhammad. This one could also be an obvious, and may in fact have been nominated for one of our other awards we'll get to later. Kamaru Usman completely shutting down Jorge Masvidal. I think 2020 has only made that one more fun to appreciate, given what Jorge Masvidal's been up to all year. And Derek Brunson beating Edmund Shabazian. Probably my personal favorite nomination, because Derek Brunson got good. Again, as like a 38-year-old. He just decided to become a good fighter again for the last few years of his career, and it's been awesome. So what are your thoughts on our nominees, Phil?
Let me think. So I think some of these work as sort of long-term strategic approaches. Some of them work as like genius tactical approaches. Mm-hmm. I think, Aljamain Sterling is, I think, a very good example of someone just having three or four things they've just bolted together and then just executing almost instantly to finish the fight. Yep. Taking an incredibly dangerous opponent out instantaneously. As like Gaethje Ferguson is a approach being built for the man in front of you. It was a round-winning approach for 5 rounds. Aldo Vera, I think that was kind of a gear. That was a plan A and a plan B. Mm-hmm. Some of them I think are a bit. Like Doben Haqparast, I think I would put that as harder to like put as a great game plan.
Simply because that's Drew Dober is typically that aggressive, even though it was the perfect solution for Haqparast. It is also maybe not as unique for him either.
Yeah. Dvalishvili was fantastic. I'm not really sure. I don't really know which one jumps out at me. I think probably the two that I think like the best are probably. Actually, no. I think there's 3. I think there's Gaethje Ferguson, Dvalishvili Dodson, and Muhammad Good.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's also one that I just thought of that we haven't nominated, but I have to mention it. I'm beholden, in fact. I think you'll want to actually change your pick, Phil, to Josh Emmett versus Shane Burgos. I mean, you really, on the air right now, you do have to agree. pretty great game plan, right? Really successful. Really just professionally executed fight overall. It's like me saying things to you and then you grumbling is like our version of Sideshow Bob walking into rake after rake after rake. And I could do it for hours. But yeah, I agree with your choices. I think Gaethje versus Ferguson, like, it really jumps to the top of my mind because it was such a breakout performance for Gaethje. Like we had definitely seen Gaethje developing in that direction, but really it wasn't that long of an arc to go from absolute nonstop madness Gaethje to counterpunching technician Gaethje.
Oh, wait a minute. Know who we've forgotten? Charles Oliveira, Tony Ferguson.
Oh. That's true. We could also add, holy shit, Khabib Gaethje. Because, like, Khabib, I think no performance before ever gave us as much cause to appreciate how good he was at adjusting the specific, unlike he's Drew Dober in that he always fights the same way, but there were such specific adjustments made to what Justin Gaethje was trying to do to him.
No, you're right. You're correct. It's Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's the winner.
How funny would it be for our category winner to be one that I just thought of, but it does feel like a really obvious choice, right?
Yeah, no, it's him. I'm 100% sold.
Because I think that was the performance that vindicated what Zane Simon, that son of a bitch, has been saying for years now, which is that is like Khabib's most underappreciated quality. It's just how intelligently he prepares for each opponent, and we sometimes have a hard time seeing it because it's always him planning different ways to get to the one thing he wants to do, but he does take different routes to get there. And specifically, I mean, the fact that Ed Gallo and I both came into our discussion of that, our preview discussion of that fight, both thinking, I mean, we weren't the only people thinking it. Hey, Khabib can't hit takedowns in open space, and also he can't hit these reactive takedowns. And he did both. And it led directly to winning the fight.
Yep. So, like, 4 separate pieces that he put together. Like, insane pressure on the feet. Like, insane ballsy pressure on the feet. Reactive open space takedowns. Open space takedowns and, hitting double legs or reactive shots.
Double legs, yeah.
And then sprint grappling rather than control. Like,
right.
Looking for fight-ending submissions.
Right.
And so it was a combination between an approach which was gonna, like, potentially win him the fight. I mean, win him, he could win the fight quickly, like Aljamain Sterling, but it was also, as we saw, it was stable over multiple rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, late Dark Horse edition, but I think I agree. What was the other one you suggested?
Charles Oliveira, Tony Ferguson. But
Charles
I think
Oliveira becoming a control grappler is also, but it is marred a bit by, Justin Gaethje did some of that to Tony Ferguson and sort of walked him to that point in his career and everything. You know what I mean? Like, if that performance is like is one of the most important things that happened this year, Gaethje Ferguson, and I think it stands out in my mind, then it adds a context to both of those fights. And the context it adds to Oliveira Ferguson seems to weaken the achievement a bit, whereas the context it adds to Khabib Gaethje only strengthens Khabib's performance. So.
I mean, I also just think that I loved Oliveira Ferguson a lot because it was such a, like, I think it was, for me, it was the fight that really, like, turned the corner for Charles Oliveira. But
sure, yeah.
I think in the end, he only really had to adjust one element of his game, which was he did the reverse of what Khabib did. Is that whereas Khabib typically prioritizes control over finish, Oliveira prioritize his finish over control. He turned the dial back in the other direction to make the fight work for him. But Khabib did so many other things in the fight which weren't necessarily all that like Khabib-esque that like I don't have much of a problem giving it to him. Even if we assume that, even if I think, it's entirely possible that Charles Oliveira could have just done that to prime Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
I think the amount of moving parts that Khabib executed on makes him the winner for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I agree. Also, we've already picked him, but the man many assumed, probably not incorrectly, was responsible for so much of Khabib's game planning, who was also his dad, had just died. And Khabib still executed one of his most singularly impressive strategies. So, hell of a great performance. Good way to retire. And, yeah. Can't ever take that away from him, Phil. You just can't. Okay, well, let's move on to our next award. And this is also one of my personal favorites, and one that I had a lot of examples that jumped to mind, because MMA really seems to be in many ways defined by this award. This is, of course, the Hey That Worked award for shitty game plans that triumphed regardless. And we see people accidentally winning all the time in MMA. But, man, there were like a lot of choices this year of people like just barely keeping things together, or people just confidently blundering to victory, without seeming to have thought about the fight for 1 minute beforehand, and just still winning it by accident. So Phil, please read our nominees for the Hey That Worked award.
We have Chris Weidman versus Amari Akhmedov. Kevin Holland knocking out Jacare Souza from his back.
Yes.
An assist from the Rona.
Yes, unfortunately.
Courtney Casey submitting Mara Romelo Barella from her back.
Good idea.
Curtis Blades making Alexander Volkov look like scrawny Derek Lewis. Mike Perry out grappling Mickey Gall.
Ooh.
Robert Whittaker fighting Darren Till with long-range single strikes.
For 5 rounds.
Derek Lewis grappling with Alexei Oleinik. Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier 3.
I almost forgot that one, Phil.
Yep.
How could I?
How could you? It's a series which has given us so much yoga game planning. Main Durandamy against Juliana Pena, who didn't work on her wrestling at all, and just merely decided to become a submission grappler.
That's right.
Uriah Hall accidentally beating Anderson Silva, and Chase Hooper getting completely owned en route to another submission win.
So I think there's a lot of decent contenders in that category. Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of people who did not deserve to win these fights. But I think we have to start off with, this is a case where I thought of the Khabib versus Gaethje of this category, also last minute, but fortunately last night. Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier has got to be the front runner, because so much of the build up to that fight, Phil, for us specifically, was about trying to predict in which way specifically that fight would be stupid. And we got it sort of right, and I also think sort of disastrously wrong, because of course that matchup is like tailor-made to just come up with an exponentially more stupid iterations each time they fight. Let's try to remind ourselves what happened in that fight that was so stupid. So let's see. Stipe Miocic came in. He didn't he eye poke the hell out of Daniel Cormier as part of his performance?
There have been so many eye pokes in this series. I'm losing track. All of the fights are blurring into one.
I know. I'm pretty sure this was the one where he arguably like blinded Daniel Cormier with an eye poke, which rules, is very funny. And Cormier was really butthurt about it, which is hilarious. It was one in which he did come out doing the body shots, but then stopped. So he came out doing the thing that was so successful in the second fight, which it took him 3 rounds to discover, but only did it for the first 2 rounds. And essentially gassed himself trying to clinch wrestle Cormier against the cage. He clearly, like in the Junior Dos Santos way, like when he added that stupid fucking elbow as the brilliant counter to Cain Velasquez, he clearly focused heavily on how not to get knocked out in the clinch again. And the result of this was that he clinched with Cormier constantly. And still, because it made him so tired, almost got knocked out in that position later in the fight. It was really dumb. Like, it should not have worked. So I do think that's a front runner for the category. I just remember how I felt watching that fight. It was like,
I mean, we could always just give, like, there's a solid chance that this could be like a lifetime achievement.
Oh yeah.
Kind of, because one thing to, it's like the Cody Garbrandt thing, right? What made Cody Garbrandt running into right hands over and over again was the fact that he kept doing it.
Yes.
The fact that this is the third fight in the trilogy.
Yeah.
And they still go out there looking like they don't know, they've never seen the other guy before in their life. The one of them is...
Oh my God. I just imagined that they walk into the cage and they just look across. It's like two breeding bulls seeing each other. They have no idea who the other person is, but they just get mad at the sight of each other. Yeah, the history adds weight to the proceedings of that fight. Like, because it had to keep getting stupider, the trilogy. And it did. In ways we couldn't predict. So what else? Who else are our top contenders in this category? What do you think? If you had to pick some to compete with that.
Derek Lewis or Alexei Oleinik has got to be sort of one.
Yeah.
But in some ways it kind of isn't, because that's always been a way to up Oleinik.
Also, it's always been a way Derek Lewis wins, is getting on top of people.
Yeah, I mean, if you survive getting him to the ground, totally possible to. It's always been totally possible to like beat him up from top position. Like, who was the guy who fought him who wasn't very good at all? Who managed to was he a Polish heavyweight?
What a question! It's heavyweight MMA, Phil.
No, but like,
did he fight Marcin Tybura?
Daniel Omielanchuk.
Oh yes. I love Omielanchuk.
Just like buzzsawed him after surviving.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it does sort of make some sense. Mike Perry out grappling Mickey Gall. That one was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Especially because he obviously didn't mean to do it. He wanted to strike, but was kind atrocious at it now.
For all the points of the fight in which he wasn't knocking Mickey Gall down, he was arguably being outstruck by Mickey Gall.
Yeah, like really badly.
I mean, I'm glad we mentioned it, even if we don't pick it, because what a bad performance. Did you see, by the way, that video Mike Perry posted?
I did not watch the video, but I saw enough from the tweets.
Before it even got reported, that was the first thing I saw. I was like, it was a weird feeling to be right at the beginning of something that I thought at the time may indeed lead to Mike Perry's well-deserved death. Where he appeared to, on some kind of drugs or alcohol, put his foot through a glass hotel door and slice his leg open, and then just be sort of lying there on the floor being like, oh shit, man, fuck, just bleeding on the ground. And his first thought, of course, I like to imagine he did this before he dialed 911 or anything, was to record
Instagram.
It for the gram. Yeah. So that is like right in line with Mike Perry's performance against Mickey Gall this year. Everything is going perfectly smooth.
So I'm trying to think. Are there other ones which really jump out?
I think Weidman Akhmedov may have been the most overall shitty, like undeserved win. It was such a bad performance.
Oh, that was really bad. Yeah,
it was really bad. It was Chris Weidman getting out wrestled by Omari Akhmedov. For long stretches of the fight, it was him like gassing after a round. Like, I'm not even sure if it was
all Akhmedov just gassing worse.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not even sure if it's the only reason it doesn't seem like a top contender is I'm not sure how much of that I can attribute to the game plan.
Yeah.
Because Chris Weidman's just kind of, like a shadow of himself now.
So can I nominate Jermaine Durandamy versus Juliana Pena for the Nick Lentz versus category?
Yes. Go ahead, move that one over.
Jermaine Durandamy, you are the honorary Charles Oliveira this year.
I love the idea of how confusing that category of award, by the way, must be, because we'll get to it later, but even I don't really know what's happening with that joke anymore.
It was the stocky submission. There was the stocky wrestler against the tall, lanky submission grappler.
But at its core, it's really a joke about like a bizarre trilogy of MMA fights that seemed like it would go on forever, but which is clearly done now, and we're still just joking about it as if it's ongoing.
But yeah, I think for this award, I think you're right. It's one of the latecomers. It's got to be Miocic Cormier 3, right? Doesn't it?
Yeah,
because it's such a
you had so much to learn from. You could have come up with a brilliant game plan by this point, and neither of you did. It's got to be. Okay.
Stipe Miocic.
Yes, congratulations, Stipe. You're both heavyweight champion and the most accidentally successful fighter in the UFC. All right, let's move on. Our next award, the Strategy is for Losers award, for good game plans that didn't work. Sort of the inverse of the Hey, That Worked award. I'll go ahead and read off. We only got a few nominees for this one. Michael Johnson versus Thiago Moises. Maybe a little unfair because in a more meta sense, that's always his strategy, is to lose in exactly that fashion. Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski, and Ray Borg versus Ricky Simon. Now, we saw early this year Ray Borg flashing much improved striking. That one stands out in my mind because I had thought for such a long time that like Ray Borg could be a good striker. He had the hand speed and everything, but seemed to have lost confidence in his striking. That was growing for a while. Seemed to have lost that growing confidence after the Demetrius Johnson fight. And then it like came back, and clearly he had been working on like his combination punching and his body shots, like great shot selection. Really, really good sort of breakout performance from Ricky Simon. And without that striking, he would have lost that fight to Simon, who is now like a viable contender in that division and at bantamweight. Instead, I think he basically made it a draw, and arguably Ray Borg could have won it. So that one stands out. For me, though, like the obvious pick for this category, it's Holloway versus Volkanovski. Because Max Holloway made such perfect adjustments to Volkanovski, and it didn't matter. Like there's still, I think, an extremely defensible case for Volkanovski getting the decision in that fight. He just, Max Holloway's perfect game planning led to all of the dramatic moments in that fight, and yet Volkanovski still won 3 rounds.
I mean, and that's why I think why so many people still get upset by this fight. Is that Max Holloway was sounding terrible before the fight.
Yeah.
No reason to assume, it was another one of those UFC things where it was like he's getting thrown back in there too quickly. He doesn't sound like he's been training properly.
Yep.
And everyone was expecting him to basically look like dog shit.
Yep.
And then he came out looking absolutely spectacular, dropped Volkanovski, like doing everything you wanted him to do. And then the fight was close and competitive, and I think Volkanovski just kind of made the adjustments and pushed Holloway back out again.
He was a better adjuster than Holloway. He could change up his whole approach to fighting more successfully than Holloway could, despite how incredibly sharp all of Holloway's pre-fight adjustments were. So, yep, clear pick.
That's why people were so emotionally invested in this, and I think some weird sites like voted it robbery of the year and stuff. It was just hard to watch for if you're a Max Holloway fan.
I totally personally I'm completely sympathetic to that. I get it. Like, if you want to be that guy online who makes the hey, if there were still Pride rules, Max Holloway won that fight, I'd be like, yeah, that's cool to feel that way. This is one of those things that just happens in fighting, and I kind of like it. It adds this sort of emotional complexity to these results. Like, I feel like this guy won, but this is how the sport works, and I can see why the other guy won. Also part of what made it such an incredible fight. So competitive. Okay, well, that's the Strategies for Losers award. Now we come to, I think, probably one of the most beloved awards of this award show's history, which is, of course, the Worst Brain Thinking in a Fight award, expertly named by my beautiful co-host, Phil, all those years ago now. Okay, read me the nominees. Whose brain did the worst thinking this year, Phil?
We have Iwan Kutalaba summoning the Muse and persuading the ref to save him.
Mm-hmm.
Spike Carlisle taking a stand for 4-minute, 55-second long first rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Randa Marcos leaping into Mackenzie Dern's guard.
Beautiful.
Full confidence that Mackenzie Dern was badly hurt by her own strike.
Spinning around.
Diego Sanchez believing himself fully capable of doing a Jorge Masvidal insta-KO against Jake Matthews.
Now, that one I had forgotten until just last night. And do you remember that?
Yes.
Down, like, Diego Sanchez had clearly, I don't even know how to approach, like, the feeling that watching this again gave me, being reminded of it. Okay, MMA is a sport where, like, everyone imitates, right? After the Silva and Machida front kicks, everyone was doing those for a while. When somebody hits, like, another twister, we're going to see people trying those. Like, everyone imitates. It's like MMA fighters have the brains of, like, Hollywood movie executives, but they're on, like, only 10% as much coke. So, like, the ideas they come up with are less off the wall and even more derivative. So that's already, to me, like, Diego Sanchez, what I'm saying is, like, the perfect embodiment of, like, the mind of an MMA fighter. Like, to the point where he now has nothing left. There's no, like, non-MMA fighter part of his brain. He's just what you think of when you think of an MMA fighter. So there's that. It's stupid. It's literally a direct, what I'm trying to say is it's literally a direct facsimile of Jorge Masvidal's KO of Ben Askren. Like, down to the body language before the fight. Diego Sanchez trying to casually lean against the cage, looking smug, while having none of Jorge Masvidal's swagger, is in itself incredible. Then to see that he is actually doing this to, in his mind, set up the exact same opening that Jorge Masvidal did, and then when Jake Matthews doesn't run at him and instantly try to take him down, because why the fuck would he? Still trying it. Like, the fact that it clearly was not happening did not discourage Diego from continuing to imitate the opening of that fight.
That's aged, like, leathery old Diego with hands behind his back, like, breaking into a trot across the Jake Matthews.
He could not gallop. Yeah.
Yeah. You just think, I mean, he can. We have seen him do it against Michel Pereira.
You're right.
But only in a very specific way.
Yeah, you're right.
And, yeah, I mean, Matthews must have just been looking at him thinking, is he joking?
Yeah. What must have been going through Jake Matthews' mind?
One of the most famous sequences in MMA history now.
And it worked because no one saw it coming beforehand. I can't, like, there's something so profoundly sad about how funny that moment is. I think it is really, like, perfect MMA. Maybe that makes it a top contender in this category, but there are two other very strong contenders in my mind.
Yeah.
Kutalaba, I mean, we've rarely seen something so beautiful in MMA.
It is one of the most singularly impressive things I've ever seen, really.
Yeah, like literally, like Jared Brooks's thing was one of the most perfect self KOs. That was, I think, last year or the year before's worst brain thinking. That was one of the most aesthetically appealing self KOs, but it was not the only one we've seen by a long shot. We've actually seen quite a few wrestlers knock themselves out. I think that even happens in wrestling sometimes. How often have we ever seen a fighter like single-handedly persuading the referee to stop the fight simply because he thinks he's convinced, he thinks he's suckering his opponent into like a deadly exchange?
I don't think anyone's ever done anything that would be a candidate for this award that has left me thinking about it as much as Kutalaba convincing the ref that the fight was over.
Right. And like, I want to mention Spike Carlisle. Like, that Spike Carlisle is like, he has like all the athleticism of like a Yoel Romero of 3 years ago, but he has the brain of Diego Sanchez right now. So like him thinking he had the kind of swagger to just like saunter off for the last 5 seconds of a round and get hit from behind as he's doing it. That is a great moment of like overestimating your own abilities and awareness and everything. But man, the Kutalaba one, and like Kutalaba is like, he can't help it. He has terrible brain thinking in every fight because he just gets so mad. And yet he's never done something so perfect. And I think he'll get so mad in the future that he'll do it again. He will toe this line a second time because that's how mad he gets.
I would love it if he would. I don't think he'll ever do that again.
I don't think the referee will stop it. But I think he will have another moment where he is for like 40 seconds trying to convince the opponent that he's more hurt than he is. I believe.
No, because I think it'll enrage him too much, because it's the equivalent. It's like he took himself out of the fight. It's like he tapped to strikes. Basically, in the eyes of the ref, he quit. I think that like has created a feedback mechanism, which will make him too mad once he thinks of doing it again for him to even be able to pull it off. He would just think about doing it, and then he would be overcome with Hulk rage and would start punching. Yeah,
that's a good point. I think it has to be Kutalaba. I mean, I think if Diego Sanchez had been KO'd going for the Masvidal knee, then it would have been a really strong candidate.
It's true. Yeah.
The fact that Kutalaba's terrible brain thinking led directly to him losing the fight. It's hard to outdo that. All right, well, Iwan, where is he from again? Is he the Moldovan Hulk?
I believe so, yeah.
All right, Mr. Moldovan Hulk, congratulations. Probably the greatest achievement you will ever have in your MMA career, winning the 2020 Handy for worst brain thinking in a fight. And with that, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we have 2 more sections of awards to get through. Fully 2 more sections. We have our listener submitted awards, of which there are still a great many, despite how many we covered on last week's show. And then we also have our returning favorite awards. These will be like the Patrick Wyman Award for Memorial Muscularity or whatever it is. The worst fight, the best bad fight, things that we have always enjoyed in previous years' shows. So come right back after this break for more Handies.
Buy a shirt. Go to redbubble.com and search Heavy Hands Graphic, or go to redbubble.com/shop/AP/64577943, or just click the link. I'm going to include a link. Buy a shirt.
All right, folks, welcome back to the 2020 Handies. Hopefully that was enough time from the break song fading out for the Oscars music to come back in, or perhaps I will once again make the editing decision to not put the Oscars music in now that I've mentioned it on the show. Meta humor. All right, we're moving on now, folks, to the user submitted. Thank you for using our podcast this year, by the way. The user submitted awards, and there were a great many. In fact, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, I should remind you once again to check it out. It was Handies Foreplay, quick hits, honorary awards, in which we did relatively little discussion, but we sure burned through a lot of quirky and weird categories, all of which I think were suggested by our listeners. So, I'm going to try as hard as I can to attribute some names to these, but, because of the way, I mean, Phil, you absolutely destroyed the credits on last week's episode. I'm blaming you fully for that. So many awards became disconnected from the names written next to them. So hopefully I'll be able to have the right names for the right awards here. And let's start off on the right foot by mentioning our first listener submitted award, the biggest choke job, also known as the fighter who made us look the dumbest. This one was suggested, probably with no short amount of passive aggression, by my dear friend, Insider Subo, at Insider Subo. I think the man's full name is pronounced Subatiki. Subatiki? Something like that, right?
I'm not going to get into mispronouncing people's names on the internet. That's for you and Zane.
That's really, yeah, we really should have had Zane record a pronunciation of Derek Subo's name. This one also sort of blends into another suggested award we had from the vaping scooter child, Sunshine Sparkle 69, who I inappropriately attributed several awards suggested by him to Matt Joya last week, and I did it on purpose. He also suggested we call this essentially the analysis is for Poindexter's Award for fighters who proved Connor and Phil wrong. But anyway, who made us look like an idiot this year, Phil? Our nominees.
The nominees are...
Read the first one. Read it loudly. What?
Oh, God. What?
Just read it loudly and clearly, please.
Last nominee is Josh Emmett. The second nominee is Jan Blachowicz, and then we have Kevin Holland, Max Holloway, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Brian Ortega.
I think this is kind of tough. I mean, I think Josh Emmett, I'm going to go ahead and comfort you, Phil, by saying that he maybe doesn't win because he only made one of us look dumb. Really? I mean, neither of us really expected him to look as good as he did. And I want to emphasize again and make sure you hear me on this, Phil, how good he looked in that fight against Shane Burgos. But, it was really only you that was like mad about it. So he doesn't necessarily have to win because, I don't feel that I didn't feel dumb after his performance. I just felt impressed.
I mean, I didn't feel dumb after Jan Blachowicz won because I picked him.
You had to bring that up.
If you're going to be pulling out Josh Emmett jokes.
You're the one who wrote his name with a frowny face next to it. Yeah, you're right. I did think Dominic Reyes. Why did you pick Jan? Was that a genuine, like, how wholeheartedly did you believe he was going to win that fight?
Like, to an extent, like there was a big part of me that was like, oh yeah, he's just going to run into a counter and get knocked out.
Yeah.
But it was just a whole bunch of like looking at Dominic Reyes fights and just being like, this guy he's just not that good. Like,
not that deep, is he? And in a lot of ways, Jan is a much deeper striker. Yeah. So I mean, yeah. obviously, you had a good case. I'm sure, though I'm forgetting it now, you made it, and I still just thought. I really think I thought I was making like an athleticism pick there. But at this point, I'm not really sure how much more athletic Reyes is than Jan Blachowicz. Especially now that Jan has developed quietly, sort of without us barely mentioning it, one of the most terrifying upper body physiques of any fighter in the UFC. Like, I was explaining to someone who'd never watched him fight when that fight happened. I was like, yeah, this guy's awesome. He's like this like weird sort of like slow-footed technician. And they're like, this guy? And I realized that through fresh eyes, he actually kind of looks like a scary monster.
Yes.
So
he has come into the legendary Polish power over time.
He really has. He really, really has. Okay, quick run through of our other nominees here. We had Kevin Holland. I don't think this is the category in which Kevin Holland is the clear front runner at all, because I certainly didn't expect him to beat Jacare, and he certainly made me look like a fool by doing it in the craziest way ever. But it was the craziest way ever. Like, I never could have predicted it.
Happening.
Yes. I think there's Brian Ortega is the other one who I think falls into a similar lane, in that no one could have foreseen that level of boxing skill and execution from Brian Ortega. So while we definitely got it wrong, and he did make us look slightly dumb, I think he made basically everyone look dumb. Even people who picked him could not have foreseen him doing that. I think the two real front runners for this category are Max Holloway and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Because I picked Gaethje. Once again, I picked against Khabib. I say once again, I really haven't picked against him that much in recent years. Like all of his recent wins before Gaethje, I definitely picked him because I thought he was the clear choice. But, I once again found somebody who persuaded me that they had the secret recipe. And in fact, despite how entertaining and insane the fight was, at no point did it ever feel like Justin Gaethje was about to beat Khabib Nurmagomedov. He was fighting a losing fight the whole time, which, did make me look rather dumb. So profoundly that I was like, I had no shame afterwards. I had to just be open about how dumb I was made to appear, because, I mean, he earned it. And then, you know what? Does Max Holloway kind of fall into the Ortega Holland category as well, of literally no one saw that coming? Or did we become little vaping scooter kids and overestimate the extent to which he had fallen off?
I think it's a tricky one.
Because that is another one where we were quite confident we were not going to see the things we saw out of Holloway in that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think for ones that, like, for me, I think I would put Brian Ortega in the first tier of, like, surprising performances.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I agree.
I think in part that fight is slightly anomalous, because the parts where, like, Brian Ortega was dominating Korean Zombie did come after that weird spinning back fist knockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, Zombie basically said he wasn't conscious for the rest of that fight after then. And it's very visible in the fight.
Yeah.
It does not look remotely the same afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But he still, like, Brian Ortega still looked very, very good.
Yeah.
Max Holloway, I think that was a great performance from a great fighter when I wasn't expecting one.
Yeah.
And Khabib Nurmagomedov was a great strategic performance, but I think I would give it, like, for me, I would give it to either Brian Ortega, or I would give it to Josh Emmett.
Wow. It hit you so profoundly. It's hard. You have to, like, reward it for hurting you, right?
Yeah, for ones which genuinely surprised me, when I was like, I don't think these guys are actually that good.
Yeah.
And they looked genuinely amazing. I would give it to either one of those guys.
To Ortega or Emmett? Yeah, I think that's fair. I think with Nurmagomedov, like, Holloway, the other thing that takes it out of the running, Holloway's fight with Volkanovski, is that it was, like, so close that, like, there's no, whoever you picked, you didn't really look that dumb.
Mm-hmm.
The Khabib one, I still think is my personal front runner, because I think, like, there's a certain point in his career where you just, like, shouldn't be picking against Khabib until somebody proves they can actually beat him. So I think the fact that I picked against him, that really is what made me look and feel so dumb. My only contention is that, while I was very impressed, I don't think I ever suggested Josh Emmett didn't have that in him. So are we splitting? Can we do that? Can we have two winners because we can't agree on one, or do we have to agree?
I'm fine with Khabib.
Okay. Josh Emmett, great shout, and I thought maybe it would, sort of soothe your wounds if he didn't win, but maybe it would actually be more cathartic for you if he did win. it would make you feel a little better about having been so very wrong about him. And that's why Khabib is the fighter who made us look the dumbest this year. Okay, next, the Li Jingliang Award for Best Foul. And we've sort of combined this one with one of our prior year's awards, which was the, how did we put it?
I think it was the Bernard Hopkins award for the most strategic cheating.
Yeah, for strategic cheating. So we sort of lumped that in here because we also wanted to include some really hysterical fouls that weren't necessarily smart. There were fouls that like arguably led to fighters winning fights or enhanced good game plans, and there were also stupid ones. And Phil, I would like you to read both to me. Oh, by the way, this category is suggested by @Jadankides. All right, Phil, take it away.
So we have Cowboy Oliveira, a Lifetime Achievement Award, because I can't remember specific fouls he's made this year, but I know he's made them.
I just saw that you put that one in here. I hadn't noticed it before, but it's really appropriate.
1FC Butthole Kick.
Did we not bother to get the person's name?
Can you elaborate on this one, Connor? I believe this was one of your suggestions.
Hold on, I'm just going to go ahead and, because I rapidly Googled it to remember what the guy's name was, is that the first article on this is from AussieMan.com, article titled, "Bloke in MMA Fight Gets Penalized for Illegal Butthole Kick." So that's really, really good. Okay, it looks like our people are, Phil, you're supposed to be helping me fill dead air.
Oh, you kept talking. I will carry on, and you will come back. We will come back to this when we are giving the overview for the nominees again. So we have Davison Figueiredo again for multiple services in pursuit of excellent fouling. He headbutted Joseph Benavidez unconscious. He kicked Brandon Moreno's balls up into his lungs, and grabbed the fence against Perez.
Against Perez, yeah.
I mean, just like a fantastic body of work. Couldn't ask for more. Like, he really is the flyweight Romero.
Yes.
When it comes to just beating the shit out of fight all the time. Ben Rothwell, his dick kick against Stefan Struve. Fantastic. I mean, won him the fight pretty undeniably. Incredibly brutal. Stellar work. Fairly, meat and potato stuff. Mackenzie Dern, Double Trouble, a personal favorite of mine, against,
yes.
How do you pronounce the name again?
Oh, Virna Jandiroba?
Jandiroba, yeah, sorry. Where she, and one which I felt like slid under the radar a bit for 2020's fouls, where she basically stuck her fingers in the eye, in Jandiroba's eyes, braced her hands on the eye socket, whilst kicking Jandiroba in the groin.
Yep. And also, I think that was like 10 seconds after another grazing eye poke. So it really was like just a salvo of beautiful fouling.
Yeah. I mean, that is genuinely innovative and incredible. Ed Herman treating the cage, Baz Rutten treats everything in the room as just another weapon. Can you elaborate on this one, Connor?
Well, this one was like it was also a top suggestion for another category that we got rid of, I think, which was the least satisfying
strategic
comeback.
fouling.
No, not that one. For least satisfying comeback, because Ed Herman fought Mike Rodriguez, and Mike Rodriguez was looking great, and Ed Herman was looking not so great. And then Ed Herman, like I almost wanted to remove it from least satisfying because I found it to be so satisfying because I love Ed Herman and I love that he cheated his way to a win. I'm pretty sure God, there was another foul too, because there was a break in the fight. Did Rodriguez hit him with an illegal blow or something? Anyway, Ed Herman was going to lose. And basically, like a fence grab kept him in top position, or kept him from being taken down long enough to secure the submission that won the fight, that he was very clearly losing. Like, he had been badly hurt in both the first and second rounds, and clearly lost them. So yeah, Ed Herman getting, in my mind, like the perfect veteran comeback win by just subtly cheating to get himself back in the running. Very well done, Ed. Old Ed Nine Fingers.
And then, for our last one, we have Cormier Miocic 3, Eye for an Eye. Really, as we've said before, a trilogy which has been really marked by the two of them just straight up trying to pull each other's eyeballs out of their skulls.
Yeah. By the way, the butthole kick was Alfie Davis suffered that against Jorge Canella. It was actually a Bellator card, not a 1 card. So clearly all of our non-UFC details are terrible. But if you haven't seen it, it is a guy having another man's big toe inserted directly up his butthole in the midst of a fight. So that's really all there is to say about it. It's a very novel
For all
foul.
you people who couldn't get enough of this when what's his face did it to poor Pettis the Younger shortly after knocking him out, I believe.
Ryan Benoit?
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah,
he
kicked
his
big toe right off his butt.
I forgot he kicked him in the ass after he knocked him out.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one was even better though, because like the man was conscious. And also there's something weird about the fact that it happened in what I can only describe as a missionary position. where Alfie Davis is on his back in open guard and the other guy.
I understand.
You understand. So it's just a novel
position that we refer to open guard as missionary position now.
That's a great running gag. Well, what else is it, you know?
Open guard, God, and there's terminology for it.
It's just a novel angle from which to find that target is all I'm saying, okay?
Yes, I understand.
Because Anthony Pettis Jr., when that happened, whose name is not Anthony, Sergio, he was really in like a face down, ass up sort of position. Like that's really asking for the butthole kick. Anyway, I've talked about it enough. Well, what do you think? Cormier Miocic seems once again like a very strong contender just because all the history leading up to the eye pokes really added weight to every single one.
Yeah, I mean, people look back on this series and they will remember that it was really dumb.
Yeah.
And that there was tons and tons of eye pokes from everyone.
But for me, I kind of want to go with Figueiredo because he's such an expert fouler. Like, it makes the Romero comparison so strong. And to me, this is a thing, like, I think people have kind of forgotten this about Romero. It's been a while since a fight by his has been seriously marked by a foul, but it's really one of his greatest abilities. And for a time there, he had like a 6-fight streak where at least once per fight, he would do some kind of blatant cheating and get away with it. And at least half the time it would lead directly to him winning. And Figueiredo really does have that quality. I think it really, like, the sort of, I don't know, the ability to cheat so effortlessly well, is really like woven into his success as a fighter, just like it is with Romero. So I want to pick him.
I will say, for anyone who wants to look back at a lot of, Romero's highlights tend to be, flying knees and big KOs and the thing of him, like, throwing people around like a bale of hay in the background of that video.
Yeah.
I think like a really underrated highlight from Romero is his dick punch.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
It is one of the people, get kicked in the balls all the time.
Right.
In UFC. Very occasionally people get punched in the balls. You'll never see a more beautiful dick punch. And
when people get punched, when people get punched in the balls, usually it's like a hook or an uppercut gone astray. Right? Like a punch went way too wide. Maybe levels were changing the exchange. No. That's not what this is. Your Romero changes levels preemptively in order to more perfectly line up his hand with the target and like a sniper, Like a sniper firing a rifle right off his shoulder. Straight punch right to the penis. I
mean, more than this, he does like a whole bunch of like prancing sort of salsa-y moves before he throws the punch. He's like dancing back and forth. Like, what's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? Punch in the balls. And then, like, it was poor Derek Brunson, of course.
Yes.
And then Romero laughs and, like, waggles his finger at the crowd.
Yeah, like everyone starts booing, and he's like,
that man's penis wasn't going to escape my fist.
I think he's wagging his finger, like, I think he's so brash that he's like, he thinks he can convince people that they didn't see what they just saw. Which is a man using expert tricks of rhythm and timing to set up a perfectly accurate low blow. Yeah, that is really a great moment. Not even part of the awards here, but I'm glad we got a chance to remember it. So what do you think for this category?
Yeah, I think Figueiredo he is a front runner. I mean, the whole like headbutting Benavidez into the like finishing punch.
Yeah,
one of the best finishing sequences I've seen with a foul since like King Mo versus who was it? It was one of the Gracies, wasn't it?
Oh, that's right. He headbutted Hodger Gracie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Which is just a fantastic fouling finishing sequence.
Yep.
And you know, much like Hodger Gracie, it ended his opponent's MMA career. Kick, also very effective against Brandon Moreno.
Yeah, I particularly like the Figueiredo Benavidez headbutt as well, because it was like such a clear sign of how much of a cheater Figueiredo is. Because like it was not like a well designed, you know, it wasn't like that little headbutt jab thing that like Jack Slack likes to talk about. It wasn't like
cheeky nodder.
Yeah, the nodder. It wasn't like even like the King Mo Hodger Gracie one where it's like, oh, King Mo, the top of his head connected with Hodger Gracie's chin. So obviously, no, like it was an equal 50-50 head clash, and only Joseph Benavidez was wounded by it. It was clearly badly affected. Deiveson Figueiredo's head is made of concrete. And he shouldn't have come out of that exchange fine, but he was like perfectly aware and comfortable immediately after it happened. So yeah, incredible.
So yeah, I mean, I do like a lot of, I think for sheer body of work, Figueiredo is, but I really like the innovation from Mackenzie Dern.
True.
It looks so stupid.
Yeah.
She puts her fingers in her eyes. It's on the same side as well. There's no like balancing factor. The fact that they're both like right, I think they're both the right side of her body.
We call those lever fouls. Yeah, lever fouling.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like she literally has her fingers in her eyes and just lifts up the leg on the same side.
Yeah.
Right into her opponent's crotch.
Yeah, it's sort of like fish hooking a downed opponent so that you can kick them in the head. You know, like the chain does make it special.
I do have a really soft spot for it because I want to see innovation in this sport.
I'm fine with that. I mean, Figueiredo already won.
Figueiredo's mastered the basics and he's applied almost all of them this year.
Yeah.
I want to see innovation.
Yeah. Mackenzie Dern is much more like a Kevin Holland of fouling, I guess. It really is like just coming up with new ways of doing it. I'm fine with giving it to her. Deiveson Figueiredo already won an award that actually means something.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's give it to Mackenzie Dern. And yeah, I hope this will catch on as well. I hope, in the same way that we see people picking up, front kicks or calf kicks, we'll see people picking up the innovations in fouling as well.
Yeah.
I want to see Mackenzie Dern double trouble again.
Yeah. Well, I'm very happy with that one. And with that, let's go ahead and move on to our next award. This was the funniest / and I think this is an important / at least for one of these, funniest / worst corner advice. Some corner advice that's bad is funny. Some is just bad. And I think we have a bit of both in this category. I'll go ahead and read the nominees. From Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje, paraphrasing here, gimme sand and do an Imanari roll. two pieces of extremely intelligible advice offered by, was it Eddie Bravo himself saying those things? I think it was.
Oh, God. It might have been.
So that was great. Oh, by the way, this category is suggested both by @OrcoDevelop and @Chapperton. Both suggested more or less the same award. Excuse me. Next, from Anthony Smith versus Glover Teixeira. Anthony Smith's corner casually agreeing that yes, Anthony Smith's teeth are in fact falling out. Mike Perry's girlfriend just sort of being there. saying things like,
"Oh, Mike.
Yeah, baby. Go, Mike." Yeah.
Get him.
And finally, Sam Hughes. No one knows who Sam Hughes is right now. I think she's a good addition, actually, to the UFC's. I think she's at women's flyweight.
Well, strawweight, I think.
Strawweight, you're right. You're right.
No way she's making.
Yeah, good point. Sam Hughes is a brand new addition to the women's strawweight edition, which is still, I think, by far the best women's division in the UFC. And she was not ready for Tisha Torres, who in fact had maybe we should give her in an upcoming award the best old guy performance, because it was a great showing of classic Tisha Torres after years of seeing her kind of not appear to have it anymore. And she battered Sam Hughes so thoroughly in the first round that Hughes went back to her corner and was like mentally broken, and no fault to her for it. She's an inexperienced fighter who just got trashed by the hands of a much quicker, more athletic, and much, much more experienced opponent. And what happens there is that Sam Hughes' coach plays a cruel game with my heart. As a man who loves a good corner stoppage, he literally, like Trevor Whitman style, confidently walks right up to the edge of stopping the fight. He says, "Can you see?" And she says, "No, I can't see out of my eye." And he doesn't like the way it's been going. And as soon as she says she can't see, he says, "All right, that's it." And then she doesn't even say anything, but he's clearly insecure about the decision he just made. So he's like, "Huh, what? Huh? What? Did you say something? Oh, you don't want to stop it?" And immediately starts walking back from the edge. And fortunately, the referee, I think he may have picked up on what was happening in the corner and came over and determined that Sam Hughes could not, in fact, see out of one of her eyes. And she did have a genuine injury to her orbital or her cornea or something. So, I want to I don't think this guy can win. I didn't even look up the coach's name because I don't want to trash him. It's a moment that will stick in my mind of a growing pain. I hope to think of it as a growing pain, of the, future generations of trainers and fighters being more okay with corner stoppages. Cause it would have made absolutely no sense to send her out in the second round. The coach had 100% the right idea for his fighter and just couldn't do it because this is MMA still. So hopefully a sign of things to come, but not a great moment for that coach. All right. Of the, what do you think, Phil?
I think it's probably Smith Teixeira, right?
Yeah, right.
Because that's the one where you're just he's dying out there and you should know better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Been with him for a long time.
Yeah.
It's falling off this man. Save him now.
And presumably you've never heard Anthony Smith come to you and say, "My teeth are falling out." Right? Yeah. Presumably you've known him long enough that should still be capable of surprising you. It's really weird to hear that from someone you've trained for so long and be like, "Yeah, I know." Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah. What else are you going to tell for our other contenders here? What else are you going to tell Tony Ferguson other than things like "Gimme sand" and do an Imanari roll? It's terrible advice, but it does seem fitting. Likewise, Mike Perry was really never getting all that good corner advice. This is a man who had Alex Nicholson just saying racist things in his corner in his first UFC fight. So his girlfriend is not that big of a downgrade, really. Yeah, I think it's Smith Teixeira because that's an experienced corner completely shitting the bed. That works for me.
Would have said Diego Sanchez and his Crazy Person. School of Self-Awareness founder Joshua Fabia.
Right.
But a lot of the stuff that he said was actually objectively not that awful.
Yeah, right.
He was like, he basically said, you need to breathe more, you need to get off the center line, think of the shadow, which is actually something Trevor Whitman has talked about. And if it gets tight, take him to the ground and get on top, and give me some time on top, and give me some ground and pound.
Yeah.
Like, all of this actually, like, bizarrely made a lot of sense.
Yeah, what was stupid about it was that he expected Diego Sanchez to be capable of following any of these instructions, but it was overall just a dumb charlatan giving sort of just mediocre, normal advice.
Yeah. Regular advice.
Yeah. Yeah, good shout. I mean, we have to at least mention him because he was really trying to be like the next, he thought he was about to become the next John Kavanaugh off the back of Diego Sanchez. So I'm glad it didn't work out for him and that he's, I think, already been forgotten. Okay. Well, our next award is the most sexually tense build up to a fight. And honestly, like, there's other contenders in this category. I think this really exists for one fight.
Really does.
This whole award.
We know it.
Yeah, I'm going to read it last because we both know it. Okay. Our nominees for most sexually tense build up, suggested by @MartianVoltaics. We have Korean Zombie versus Brian Ortega. There was a lot of weird sexual tension in this one, to be fair.
Was
like, Brian Ortega he'd gotten into a fight with like some like little K-pop boy that like was friends with Korean Zombie, and Korean Zombie was like standing up for him. It led to this weird emotional intensity that no one really seemed to know what was happening, but they like couldn't stop themselves. There was a weird energy happening there. I'll give them that. Iwan Kutalaba versus Magomed Ankalaev. Fine. You know, some tension, I don't think it was purely sexual. I mean, in fairness, I don't know that there's that much air between sexuality and violence for a man like Iwan Kutalaba. I think he really just has one feeling, but not overtly sexual as far as I remember. Kevin Holland will be saying sexual things to everyone. We have here Holland versus anyone. He will say sexual things, but it's not really like all that much about the sexual tension. They're more just sort of like, tossed off comments. Obviously, the star of this category, Israel Adesanya versus Bohashinya himself, Paulo Costa. Probably the gayest build up to a fight ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, to the extent that the climax of the storyline of this fight, and I use that word very deliberately, was Israel Adesanya mounting his fallen foe and humping him several times. Like, that was literally the cathartic moment for Israel Adesanya. He would not have succeeded as much as he wanted to if he didn't get to symbolically insert his penis into Paulo Costa.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for anything to top this as gayest MMA fight of all time, frankly.
Right? Like, I'm sure there are others. It's a very gay sport, but...
Yeah, I mean, if MMA is an extremely homoerotic sport...
Yeah.
And talking about it like it's, I don't know, like 80s action films... 80s, 90s action films. This is like Showdown in Little Tokyo, which is one of the most homoerotic films I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It will be incredibly hard to stop.
It's like the final fight from Undefeatable. Have you seen that one?
Oh, yes.
With Cynthia Rothrock, and like, even though she's the star of the movie, the finale, she just leaves the storyline so that like her best friend and the villain can literally tear pieces out of each other's shirts until they are stripped to the waist, shiny with oil, and just having the most screamiest two slabs of meat just clanging together style of fight you've ever seen. That kind of homoeroticism, yes.
Staring wide-eyed at each other.
Yes.
Going, ah.
Yes. Yeah. And sexually tense is really the name of the word. It's not even just the homoeroticism. It is even more so because those 80s movies, like, they're gleefully homoerotic. Like there's catharsis happening in the moment of homoeroticism. Like, yes, we're unbridled. We get to take our shirts off and tangle. We're loving it. This was clearly for both men so frustrating for the build-up. Like they were not having a good time. They both desperately needed to get off, and couldn't admit that they needed that, nor were they allowed to do it until the fight. There is no parallel for sexual tension in MMA to this fight.
Yeah, I think the only one that even comes within a mile of it is Cody Garbrandt against TJ Dillashaw.
Yes, and even that,
because that was that whole alpha male thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, even that, can't really touch it.
Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations, Adesanya and Paulo Costa. You guys did a great job. Really. I mean, it kind of almost makes up for how sort of disappointingly one-sided the fight itself was. The build-up was really something else. All right, well, let's move on to our next award. This one will be about as close, I think, to a quick hit as we come, although I say that, not knowing how much we're going to have to say about it just yet. This one, suggested by @Redford, is the Spike Carlisle Award for Worst Vibe of the Year. And even though it's named after Spike Carlisle, and he is the first among the nominees, it was actually a surprisingly stacked field because MMA is full of people who give off terrible vibes. The nominees for this category: Spike Carlisle himself, Sean O'Malley, Jorge Masvidal, Greg Hardy, and Mike Perry. Some stiff competition there. Even stiffer than the last category, Phil.
Okay, so I think we need to eliminate people who are idiots.
Why?
Because
idiots have bad vibes all the time.
Yeah.
Look, I know what you're going to say.
Spike Carlisle does not. You look into Greg Hardy's eyes. Yeah. That's a bad person.
There's malice.
Yeah, Spike Carlisle is simply one of the stupidest people I've ever seen.
You're saying he is like Tito Ortiz, or also like a puppy, sort of blameless for the things he says and does.
I mean, to some extent, I don't want to put my name to that kind of thing because
I will fully exonerate Tito Ortiz for the rest of his life.
He might do something really horrific in future. He's
gonna do horrific things. He's the fucking temporary mayor of Huntington Beach. He's gonna do awful things, but also he literally has no idea how dumb he is. He has no idea, nor is he smart enough to ever find out. So.
Is the proverbial frog down the well. So Spike Carlisle, I think I think he has to be eliminated. He's too dumb.
Fair enough.
Also, Jorge Masvidal.
He got bested twice too. I mean, Spike. He kind of got his just desserts this year, Carlisle.
Yeah, Jorge Masvidal. Also, like the stuff he just says is just really stupid.
Well, yeah. But exceptionally stupid compared to the average MMA fighter. I don't think he's not nearly at that Carlisle level. Not even close. I don't think
more that people thought that he was cool. Yeah. And he turned himself into like a.
You can say it. It's okay.
Shameless, like, dancing idiot for an incredibly dumb political movement.
Yeah. I think with Masvidal, it really is the whiplash that makes him such a strong contender for me personally. Cause he literally over the course of 2020, like burned, at least there are many people who like him more than ever. But for a lot of people, he really burned a career's worth of goodwill. Cause like that whole career of like striving and never quite figuring it out, never quite making it was what made his like final ascension to like star status so cathartic for so many. I think a lot of people just felt gratified, like, yes, like Robbie Lawler before him. Jorge Masvidal has like finally figured it out way late in his career. And to immediately follow that up by just becoming like the biggest, dumbest chud online is pretty cool.
Yeah, it was one of those things where people were like, "Yeah, Jorge Masvidal, he's Colby Covington's best friend." After this, you're like, "Oh yeah, he was Colby Covington's best friend."
Yeah. Like they really like each other. They hang out every weekend. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. What do you think of the other contenders here? Sean O'Malley, obviously. I mean, truly, like I think in the purest sense, it's just a bad vibe.
I think I might want to give it to him,
right?
Despite the fact that he's probably not going to do anything evil.
He's in a category with far more evil people.
Right. The whole Twitch playing stoner, can't take a loss thing.
Yeah,
it's such a repulsively 2020 vibe.
Yeah, I think specifically for the kind of old men that you and I are too. Like Sean O'Malley makes a very good choice because of that. It's like, he's I don't know. He's just like the next generation, and I can already feel myself screaming at him to get off my lawn.
Sweet. So let's avoid all morality. Also, I don't want to give anything to Greg Hardy.
That's my thought as well. I'm glad you said that. If we gave it to Greg Hardy, he would win an award. I don't want him to win shit.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I'm going to right now, no one but you and I will see this, but I'm just going to go ahead and do a, oh, that's not how you do it. Hold on, everyone. Shh. Everyone, I'm figuring it out. Okay, there we go. I put a strike through on his name. Sorry, bitch.
Wow.
Sean O'Malley, worst vibe of the year. Okay, our next award, we only thought of one nominee, but we may as well say it just so we can think of the fight. Most successful out-of-shape fighter. Really great award idea suggested by a longtime friend of the show at @high_light. Rich, as I remember his name once being. And it's Jake Collier. Because after the aforementioned John Vellante, who we will mention again, I think. After the aforementioned John Vellante was submitted by Maurice Green in one of the funniest and worst fights of a career, just replete with those fights, he stayed just as fat as he was in that bout and went in there against a Jake Collier who had also gotten intensely fat in order to go from light heavyweight to heavyweight. So it was just too pudgy.
Collier was a middleweight.
At one point, he was a light heavyweight most recently, wasn't he? Or did he go straight from middleweight to heavyweight?
No, he didn't jump straight. He didn't jump like 2 weight classes like Rumble, but he's been eating his way up there.
He's one of those guys who, John Vellante kind of looks the same with like more spillage over the top of his pants. Mm-hmm. Jake Collier physically transformed. He did like
that man has inflated,
Yeah, he did like a season 8 of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia Mac style cultivation of mass to become a heavyweight. And beat the other fat out of shape guy. So I think he's a clear front runner and the obvious choice for most successful out of shape fighter of the year.
Yes, go Jake Collier. Also, he did tons of spinning shit.
Yes.
And it looked funny, and that's what Mac would have done.
He's always been a fun fighter, Jake Collier. He's always been like one of those sort of quiet favorites of mine to watch. And he's still Jake Collier. He just got way fatter. So it rules. It's awesome. Okay, next one I've been really looking forward to, Phil, and I'm sure you have as well. The Phil McKenzie Award. First time I think we've ever had one named after you. Should be a prodigious honor. The Phil McKenzie Award for Best Ritual Manslaughter of an Aging Fighter, aka the Old Bastard Had It Coming Award, via at Limsma. Related, we had another suggestion. God knows who suggested it. Was it Joya or Sunshine Sparkles for the Best Putting Out to Pasture, which is really the same award. But Phil, you love seeing old men just mercilessly fed to the crows. You, in a way, I think that's sort of what you envision the purpose of this sport being. Would you, I mean, you don't seem that enthusiastic about it.
It's just the appropriate way to it's not necessarily the purpose, it's the end point.
Okay.
This is the just the big chomping gnashes at the end of the brutal conveyor belt of existence.
Yeah, but you don't really treat it like a sort of an unfortunate eventuality, do you? You like it. You could be honest. You like when the old men get killed.
That's what they get.
That's the spirit I'm looking for. All right, now with that in mind, please read the nominees.
Okay, we have Shogun Hua versus Paul Craig 2.
Terrible.
Anderson Silva, Uriah Hall.
Yeah.
Formiga Perez and Formiga Moreno.
Oh.
Benavidez Figueiredo. I think it's more Benavidez Figueiredo 2, I think.
Yes.
Cruz Cejudo.
Mm-hmm.
Sanchez Pereira. Dominic Cruz trying to drag Keith Peterson into the mist with him.
That is Cruz Cejudo, just written again.
Yeah. Miguel Baeza against Matt Brown. And Neil Magny against Robbie Lawler.
Making Robbie Lawler lose the exact kind of fight he hates losing.
Yeah.
And a little secret one that sort of got missed at the bottom. Holland Jacare.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's definitely a contender, too.
So I think, we discussed this at some other point. I think there's a lot of criteria which make the perfect glue factory for the aging war horses.
Sure.
And I think hyper-athleticism is great. The other person not being very good is also excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Because then the old fighter can look at them and think, this guy isn't good. And they can just get overwhelmed by their brutal physicality and just not be able to do anything.
This is me saying this, by the way. This is a mean award. It's not nice.
We're just giving the listeners what they want. And I think, there's a lot of great candidates here.
Yeah.
I mean, Shogun Craig 2, fantastic. In fact, this one was too mean for me because A, Paul Craig isn't that good.
No.
B, he's not even athletic. So Shogun was just forced to concede that he's just he doesn't have it at all anymore.
And
was made to adapt to strikes to Paul Craig.
Yeah, Shogun had to, Mike Perry style, choose to grapple with Paul Craig again.
Yeah.
So that too is so crushing that he didn't, I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's really depressing performance. Really depressing.
It was his only path to victory the first time. They were like, now let's do it now that you're even older and you don't even have that. So I can respect it, but it didn't have the overwhelming athleticism that I want to see.
Okay. Somehow not cruel enough. Somehow not cruel enough is what you're saying about that.
I mean, no, it was in some ways it was too cruel, but it should be cruel in the right way.
I see. Okay.
I think all of these, I think Cruz against, Cejudo that's a good one, but it's not that good because Cruz is still able to say to himself, oh yeah, I'm only using title contenders. This guy, he won belts at 2 weight classes.
Now let me say, is that not the perfect, because I understand what you're saying, right? That the Craig Shogun doesn't quite scratch the right itch. You want to see the horse do a perfect aerial somersault as it careens into the vat of glue. It just, all the stars have to align, so it's just the perfect death. And, I want to say that the fact that Dominic Cruz lost in such a way that in 4 years he will come back for his 8th title shot may in fact make it the most cruel putting out to pasture on this list. Because he really still thinks he's got it.
It shouldn't be cruel. It should be an ending. Because MMA fighters are silly. And they need to learn that this sport is not forgiving at all. And they need to learn that, if you don't have it anymore, you shouldn't be fighting. It's bad for you.
Well, I do want to point out that because this is MMA, very few of these awards, I think, fit that. I think a lot of these fighters
they need to have it. They need to have it bashed into their heads with a giant mallet made of muscle. And that's why my pick for this is obviously Sanchez Pereira.
Yeah.
Because this is... It's the perfect kind of booking for this kind of thing. Diego is incredibly worn. He's been fighting for 1 million years. Pereira is absolutely terrible.
It's true. The fact that he's not good does add something. Not good, but freakishly athletic. It really is like it is only like youth and vitality that is allowing me to beat you right now, feeling.
Yeah, and he's giant and violent.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I remember how this fight starts. Like, Diego runs up to him and tries to, like, rolling thunder him.
Yes.
And they just end up in a clinch together, and Pereira's just like, oh, I'm twice as strong as this man.
Yeah. But then doesn't even mercifully execute him at that moment.
No, he just ends up, like, gradually beating him up more and more stupidly.
God, it's like a smart...
Including parts where he starts doing the horse stance, then realizes that Diego... and then realizes for a second, he's like, oh wait, I don't actually have any strikes I can do from this position. And just has to run away from Diego. Points where Diego would try and run at him and would do the arm pumping, hundreds of steps per yard.
Yeah.
Like characteristics of a Looney Tunes character, and would then get sat straight back down again by a single punch.
Yeah, throwing combinations with the body mechanics of a javelin thrower, like all that run up and everything.
Exactly. Just as he's coming up to throw it. But also it's the fact that, like, Pereira, when he had the fight clearly in hand, like towards the last minute and a half of the fight, obviously knees Diego in the head. And I think this really speaks to the value of the Old Bastard Had It Coming award, and why this should be done more often. Because you can see for a moment, after it happened, you could see sentience and realization in Diego's eyes.
Yeah.
And he was like, you know what? I probably could continue fighting. Could probably carry on fighting this guy. You know, this probably hasn't hurt me that badly, considering I am Diego Sanchez, and anything that doesn't immediately kill me can largely shake off. He's just sitting there thinking, I've just been fucked up for 3 rounds by this guy. I'm not actually insane enough to think I can win this fight in the last minute anymore.
And that's Diego Sanchez you're talking about.
Yeah. And Hera made him learn. Made him think. And now Diego Sanchez is seriously saying, I want to retire.
Yeah, you say that, and he is talking about retiring. He also fought right after that, again. So it didn't convince him, like, oh my god, I clearly don't have what it takes. He went and fought Jake Matthews after that, which is another hysterical physical mismatch.
Yeah, but he thought he could flying knee him.
That's worse. He had a moment of clarity, and then, like, to compensate for how uncomfortable that made him, dove further into the pool of insanity than ever before, and convinced himself he was Jorge Masvidal. So I don't know. Yeah. I definitely appreciate all the nuances, and for a moment, if this were a movie and it ended right there, you could go on believing that Diego Sanchez completed his arc and learned his lesson. But we know he didn't.
Yeah, but like the tides of insanity are obviously never gonna like allow Diego a moment of like an actual cathartic moment like that. But it clearly stuck with him a bit. You know, you could see him seriously after that. He was just like, no.
Yeah.
You know what? Fuck this. I'll take the win bonus. And
it planted a new seed.
I'm not winning this.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can do to old fighters. If they're in there being like, oh yeah, I'm sure I'm still championship contender. Just put them in with some giant fucking freak who's just gonna absolutely like throw them into outer space, and that will teach them.
Yeah, I guess the only other one I want to sort of emphasize was this one really was hard to watch, especially for me being a southwestern Ohioan, It was Matt Brown versus Miguel Baeza.
Oh, yeah.
And like the fact that Matt Brown got to do everything he wanted to do, it was such a clear example of like how being young and in shape just makes you immortal, ironically. Matt Brown smashing Miguel Baeza for most of the first round and getting tired and then getting hurt, I think, at the end of the round, and then getting succinctly finished in the second round. Like, he did all the classic Matt Brown stuff, didn't even have to come back to do it. That's the other thing. It's an inversion of so many of Matt Brown's great fights. He instead of being the guy who survives anything and then comes back to like, to execute you with shocking intelligence and precision, was reversed that paradigm and became a guy who desperately needed to finish this younger, much worse striker in the first round, or else he would get tired and be finished himself. That sucked. And I think the many layers of irony happening there must have had some impact on Matt Brown, although I do think he was talking about fighting one more time. But he was talking about it, I think, as a retirement fight. So yeah, it also...
He was like, I would like to do this against Carlos Condit. And I'm like, okay.
Fine. Yes. Yeah, which is right. Like, that's exactly what he should be thinking. It clearly did make a change, and I think going into the Baeza fight, he still thought he might have another run in him. And it convinced him he did not. And does not. So yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I guess I'll go with Sanchez Pereira because you made it really funny and tragic all at the same time. But it's MMA, and it's a sport that only ends tragically. So there are a lot of contenders, and probably always will be. And I honestly can't believe we never thought of a category like this for years prior. But I think this one's going to stick around.
Yep.
Okay, well, to cleanse our palates, let's move on to a much more cheerful award, the Best Old Guy Win. This was suggested by @Vorpality. Likewise, we had suggested the Dan Kelly Award for Best Win While Completely Shot, suggested by @The Long Walk. Likewise, we had the How Many Times Do We Have to Teach You This Lesson, Old Man Award, suggested by @Sexual Marmalade. So 3 awards, really all in the same lane. Something listeners of this show know you and I love, Phil. Old guys getting it done. Somehow you like both of these things, by the way. You like... You love old guys getting it done. Like, you love the moment when you think a guy's done and he proves he's not, almost as much as you love the moment when the guy thinks he's not done and it is proven that he is. So I don't know.
I mean, you've seen, or read Animal Farm.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if there's the moment when, like, they put Boxer into the car and then into the van or whatever it is, and he gets driven off to the, and then like instead of it driving off, it just goes onto the van just drives off onto like a giant catapult, just flings him off into the horizon. You can't tell me that wouldn't have improved that book.
Yeah, I guess. I think the reason it works in a book is that I wanted Boxer to escape, you know, which is like what these that we're about to talk about, these nominees are. They're the old horse escaping. But no. You apparently think that is like a funny part of the book when he's being driven off to be made into glue. Anyway, read the nominees, you fucking psychopath. Best Old Guy Win.
Okay. The nominees are Bob Swanson over Daniel Pineda. John Dodson over Nathaniel Wood, Andrei Arlovsky over Felipe Lins, Rafael Dos Anjos over Paul Felder, Ed Herman over Mike Rodriguez, and Tisha Torres over Sam Hughes.
Right. I think some good choices here. I'm going to go ahead and knock off the ones I don't think are top contenders. Tisha Torres over Sam Hughes. I think it was maybe one of the finest like return to form performances here. It remains to be seen if it is a last hurrah. I don't really think it is. I think Tisha Torres has long been capable of that. And I think the fact that it came out so profoundly does have something to do with the fact that Sam Hughes was just not up to snuff. Not yet. So, it doesn't have quite the drama to make it a Best Old Guy Win for me. Likewise, well, I don't know. I was going to say Andrei Arlovsky over Felipe Lins. It doesn't really hit all the right notes, you know, I don't think it can be the best, but it has to be here because it's another Andrei Arlovsky old guy win in a long line of those. Like, he just will not die. And in fact, continues to like develop new angles to his game to keep him viable and competitive in the division. So it has to be mentioned. Like, Andrei Arlovsky it's at heavyweight, and that certainly helps in the same way that Sam Hughes helped Tisha Torres look good. But the man just won't really like get bad the way you expect him to. He keeps just developing just enough to cling to like fringe contender status. He's still here. When was Andrei Arlovsky? When did he debut? He was in the 90s, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was definitely in the 90s. Yeah, he's definitely been fighting for over 20 years.
Insane, and was knocked out a million times, and then just like stopped getting knocked out every fight.
Knocked out in like his first fight.
Yeah, by Vyacheslav Dotsik, one of the most insane figures in the history of an insane sport. Yeah, 99. He debuted, and he got a win. 2 wins in 2020. Shit, why didn't we mention his win over Tanner Boser? That one means more. Either one of those. I mean, the guy debuted in 99. He ended 2019 on a streak that was he won 1 of his prior 6 fights at the end of 2019 with 1 no contest in there. Which was a fight that he officially lost before it was flipped. So yeah, like almost 6 in a row, and then just still wins 2. And Tanner Boser is like, that's a meaningful win. Tanner Boser was like as close as you get to a hot prospect in the heavyweight division. Anyway, I've talked about Andrei Arlovsky too long for a guy who's not going to win, but it's sort of a lifetime achievement award for him as well. Anyway, what do you think of these nominees, Phil? Any top picks for you?
Also, if we're having Andrei Arlovsky, it also seems like we should probably have Alistair Overeem in there.
True. Yeah, another guy who just keeps reinventing himself and keeps holding on. Now he's wrestler Alistair Overeem.
Yep, with 2 stoppage wins over decent competition in Augusto Sakai and Walt Harris.
Yeah, very good shout. Very good shout. Also, that was Overeem Harris was going to be the other top pick for least satisfying comeback, because the entire narrative around that made everyone justifiably very sympathetic for Walt Harris, and then it became pretty clear pretty quickly when it was happening he wasn't going to win. What do you think, though? John Watson KOing Nathaniel Wood, pretty cool. Honestly, I think John Dodson still has that and probably will for quite some time because he was such a great athlete. So I don't think he's quite decrepit enough yet for me to warrant winning this. Likewise for RDA over Paul Felder, I think we kind of saw that just like not being bigger than his opponents had an effect on his performance as a welterweight as much as age did.
Yeah, and I think we just underestimated Michael Chiesa a lot. He just had that fantastic performance.
Mm-hmm.
Probably should have been in one of the strategy awards, frankly.
Probably, yeah. Actually, that was a complete shutout. Ed Herman over Mike Rodriguez I found to be intensely satisfying and great. And it really was like, I think the old guy craftiness also led to that by way of cheating. So that rules.
I think it's between Herman and Swanson, really.
Yeah, and I want to go with Cub, which is why I didn't mention it until last. Cause,
I suspected you were building up to it, yes.
Yeah. Nothing makes me feel as good as seeing, it was the same feeling I got when he beat Doo-Ho Choi. More dramatic turnaround. This one ended in a finish in the second round, but he was in even more dire trouble. In the beginning of the fight with Pineda, was about to be completely shut down with low kicks, was limping, and was just like, yep, I guess time to turn into Evil Cub once again. And he did it. And I just love seeing Cub Swanson get old man wins. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Are you picking that as well?
Yep, works for me. It was a classic Cub performance, big long strikes from from range. Like, he got a finish in a way he hasn't for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
It was great stuff.
All right, our next award, and we are nearing the end of our listener-submitted ones, and just in time, we have here an award for which we have been bribed. We have been promised free jerky to name this award. So this is the Ben Cohn Award, or rather, should we call it the Ben Cohn's Beef Jerky Award for idiocy in grappling. And we should mention along with that, A, this category was suggested by @Atticus C. Crow. But B, Ben Cohn of the Vaping Scooter Gang and the Fight Site makes excellent beef jerky. So this is sponsored. Go check out his business and buy some beef jerky. He will send it to you. I've been told it's really good. Idiocy in grappling, Phil. Read me the nominees, please.
So we have Sam Alvey almost getting standing arm triangled by Ryan Spann.
Wow.
Spahn. We have Jean Volante tapping due to fatness. We have Antigulov launching into Paul Craig's triangle. And we have Juliana Pena forgetting that she was the grappler in the match against Jermaine Durandamy.
Mm-hmm. Some strong choices there. My gut immediately goes towards Volante versus Green.
It does. Saw it recently. It is, if you're watching this fight again, it's unfathomable as you are. It's one of those fights where it's unfathomable as you are approaching terminus of the fight. You cannot imagine how Jean Volante is going to lose this.
It really rewards rewatching for that reason. Like right up to the end, you're like, "There's no way."
Crap out of Maurice Green. You're like, "When is it going to happen? How? What is going to happen?" And then he just gets swept and then gets tapped in. Sorry, he doesn't get swept. He's in top position. He just gets like arm triangled from the bottom.
He's just tired.
He's tapped out. He's just tired and fat.
He's just tired and fat. That's it. He could have just adjusted position and taken all the pressure off, but he was too tired even to do that. And yeah, I don't think like Juliana Pena, never been all that sharp technically, to be honest. Who could have seen Jermaine Durandamy submitting her? I can forgive that. Antigulov, like Paul Craig's, is hardly the first submission he has gleefully launched himself into. So maybe he deserves a little lifetime achievement cred there, because that is really what he does best. But
well, that really was one of the fights where it was like, oh, I can see how this fight's going to go. It totally went exactly that way.
Yeah, one of the most predictable fight dynamics ever. Sam Alvey versus Ryan Spann, like that is just, I think we'll mention it again. I think it's a top contender for best bad fight of the year. But Volante, like, yeah, it's like the opposite of a great movie or book where you get to a scene where you're like, how are the heroes going to get out of this? Except in this case, the hero is like the protagonist you're waiting for is, the stupidest grappling mistake you could possibly make. And you just can't see it coming until it happens. So congratulations, John. You really, really earned it. All right. And finally, from the listener suggestion, this one coming by way of @NotKovitz is the worst KO of the year, parentheses, dumbest or least aesthetically pleasing. And I found this one to be interesting because it's really easy to come up with great KOs. And there's an obvious pick, as we mentioned at the top of the show, for that. But what was like the ugliest, shittiest KO of the year? Our contenders are Greg Hardy versus Maurice Green, Cody Garbrandt versus Rafael Assunção, Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Colossally stupid KO there. Over in, I think this is in Bellator, Tim Johnson versus Tyrell Fortune. That may have actually been a PFL fight. Just a really stupid, classic, ugly heavyweight KO, and I had to put it on here because I love Tim Johnson. Chaos Williams versus Alex Morono. And Conor McGregor hurting Donald Cerrone's eye with his shoulder 30 seconds into the fight. That was this year. Was it?
Yeah.
I feel like I have to double check it again.
Sure, it was. Yeah,
feels like an eternity since I've cared about what Conor McGregor was doing. Maybe because that fight is included in me, not caring. What do you think, Phil?
That's Ngannou Rosenstrike.
Yeah.
I mean, that fight, he's less like punching than he is like slam dancing. Runs at Rosenstrike, just swinging his arms and his legs, and then one of them manages to hit Rosenstrike and he falls over. Incredible. Yeah. Rosenstrike, he's like, I'm a big, powerful man. I'm going to counter this person as he comes rushing in. And then he does. And the guy's just like, punch, 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 punch. And then one of them lands, and that's it.
Complete, canceling out of technique as, anything important. Just be a big, stupid monster and swing your hands around. Yeah.
It's so bad.
I'm with that. I do want to give a shout out to McGregor Cerrone. Cause, there were people who were impressed by that. And to me, it was that was another fight with an incredibly predictable dynamic. And yet it was disappointingly predictable. It happened so quickly. Cerrone was so ready to fold. And I'm sorry. I know everyone was mad at Stephen A. Smith for saying that, but Cerrone was not. It was first round Cerrone in under a bigger spotlight than he'd ever experienced. And we know how Cerrone deals with that kind of pressure. So it really sucked. It was not satisfying to me at all. But yeah, I think you're right. Ngannou Rosenstrike takes the cake. And,
I mean, if the shoulder strikes had literally ended the fight, if Cerrone had just crumpled to the floor, and then at least he had to back up, and then McGregor kicks him in the head, and it looked like a fairly standard MMA finish from that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ngannou Rosenstrike is one of the ugliest games I've ever seen.
And I think I picked Rosenstrike in that fight too, which made it even funnier.
Oh, I did too.
I think I told all the family and friends that were watching that with me, and it was a rare occasion where there were several people watching the fights, and I was like, yeah, I'm picking Rosenstrike. I don't know. Could go either way. And then the stupidest knockout of all time happens instantly. So yeah, good call. Good call. Why don't we take one more break, folks? When we come back, our returning favorites. We've got about 5, 6, maybe 7 more awards to get through, and then we'll be done with what has been a star-studded and stellar 2020 Handies so far. We'll be right back after this. Hey, everyone.
Buy a shirt at redbubble.com. You can also get stickers and phone cases and more. Yeah. Just click the link.
And welcome back to the 2020 Handies. I am your host, still Connor Rebush. With me is Phil McKenzie. Isn't he lovely? Isn't he charming? If you're just joining us, you're listening to Podcasts Wrong. But we're on to our returning favorites awards section, in which we revisit some of our favorite award categories from years prior. First up, this is always one of my favorites, because this is not a joke. This is the Fight Like This Person Award for good process and technique. So it was originally suggested by Andrew Pearson at Vorpality. And yeah, I think there were a lot of ones this year, right, Phil? This was a pandemic UFC has been it's been a period in which a lot of fighters have just totally cleaned up their processes. Seem to have sharpened not only their technique, but the ways in which they think about plying their fighting games against their opponents. So our nominees: Sean Woodson, Brian Ortega, Lerone Murphy, Gavin Tucker, the boy, Brad Riddell, another boy, Leon Edwards, psych, he didn't fight this year, nerds. Otherwise, he'd probably be in there, right? But he's not. Nathaniel Wood, Hani Barcelos, very strong choice right there. Yan Xiaonan is sort of my dark horse pick. Surprisingly clean boxing. She just had 2 fights this year where she beat Claudia Gadelha and Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So kind of cleaning out yesterday's contenders. Arman Sarukian, Phil has just added, as well as, of course, another good addition, Phil, Rafael Fiziev. A lot of great technicians honestly. And a lot of, several of these people are people who like made clear steps to clean up their games this year. Very strong category. A lot of people to learn from. A lot of them are better technicians even than Martin Kampmann.
And who?
Martin Kampmann?
Indeed.
Yes. So what do you say?
It's a tricky one because I'm trying to think, do we want to, you can reward like striking technique, which gives you like guys like Dizeev or Riddell, or you can reward like being well-rounded, be like Honey Barcelos. Do you want to go give it to like prospects who are on the way up, like Lerone Murphy and Sarukian? Like just like super improved guys like Ortega or Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to say. There's a lot of like, like different angles you can take on it. I think Honey Barcelos is the one who jumps out at the moment, right? It might be recency bias. I think it's as a completed product who jumps back and forth between different phases of the game. You're looking at a very, very strong example. Like, I think he is, obviously gets compared to Aldo a bit because he looks a shitload like him.
Yes.
But
he's ugly, Aldo.
I think is a more well-rounded MMA like
his game. I think. Yeah, I don't think he can do a lot of things that Aldo can't do, but his game is much more built on his well-roundedness. I mean, you could argue that's because he's not nearly as sharp a striker as Aldo ever was.
Yeah. I don't think he's like defensively sound. I don't think he's going to be, we haven't seen it, but I don't think he's going to be like an Aldo tier defensive wrestler.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm not saying he's better. I'm saying if you wanted to have someone who had high points in everything, this is what he would look like. Just like a lot of like weaving, going back and forth between like the clinch and like striking, combination work, like submissions. Like couldn't really go wrong with him. Like really tremendously exciting fighter to look at.
Yeah, I agree. And
most of the others that we've seen in that kind of category are either maybe too early along the road, like maybe, Arman Sarukian,
Sean Woodson,
or they're, they have like a clear flaw, like, Gavin Tucker's defense or, or they're just not quite as well rounded as he is.
I was actually going to shout out Gavin Tucker as kind of my favorite pick here. I'm not sure. Is his defense worse than Honey Barcelos's? I don't think so.
I think it is.
Yeah?
I think he's more dependent on foot speed than Barcelos is.
Well, I guess. Honey Barcelos, which fight of his was it? He's certainly like been cracked an awful lot. He's had some really close fights in the UFC. It's not like he has just run away with everyone and you know what I mean? Like he got hit by Khalid Taha an awful lot. Fight of the night. Gavin Tucker fought like a super intense pressure guy and completely stopped him from building momentum at all. Whereas Honey Barcelos, I think Gavin Tucker, I would argue he relies less on his athletic ability.
When did Gavin Tucker do that? Because he lost the third round to Quarantillo, did he not?
No. He started to have some trouble and then took Quarantillo down. So this is my thing, is I think he fits for, and controlled him for the better part of the last round. I think he fits for both cleanliness of technique, because I agree. I guess like head movement and stuff isn't his strongest suit, although I think he's pretty good at it. But his offensive technique is really pretty. The way he puts combinations together and angles off after landing them is beautiful and perfect. Really textbook shit. But then also he fits the well-roundedness category because The only reason, like Gavin Tucker had a massive prospect loss as an old prospect to Rick Glenn, and since then has been like a control wrestler who hits well-timed reactive takedowns so that he can continue to make his back foot game work. And I also think like, I don't know if this is a product of his game or an athleticism thing, but the fact that he like gasses and still finds a way around that because of his intelligence as a fighter. Yeah, I think Gavin Tucker's a strong pick for this category personally. I think he's a really well-rounded, well-schooled fighter.
Yeah, I think that like the depth of the wrestling game he showed actually has really given credence to that.
I'm okay with it going. I mean, well, I was going to say I'm okay with it going to Hanni Barcelos because he's probably not going to get rewarded with anything else. But Gavin Tucker is in much the same situation of being.
Yeah, they're both pretty old.
Yeah,
guys in very vicious divisions who probably won't have long to make their mark.
Yeah, I don't know. I really like Gavin Tucker for this one, but of course I love Hanni Barcelos. They're both awesome.
You can give it to Gavin Tucker. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not against it. I mean, I think Barcelos is the better athlete of the two.
Yes.
And so.
Yeah, I think Gavin Tucker gets by more.
I think he probably has less replicable elements of his game.
Exactly.
He's very quick and powerful.
Yes, my thoughts exactly. Okay, well, let's go on to our next category then. And in fact, I might jump ahead because I realized that we would be ending on this and it makes no sense. I'm going to jump ahead to the Nick Lentz versus Charles Oliveira fight of the year. What are our nominees, and can you explain why we still have this category?
I cannot.
Okay. That's fine.
So our current nominees are Charles Oliveira versus James Gordon and Charles Oliveira versus Kevin Lee. I believe you have nominated Charles Oliveira versus Tony Ferguson, and I have nominated Jermaine Durant against Juliana Pena.
One of them you may have noticed is not a Charles Oliveira fight. Charles Oliveira versus Tony Ferguson is ironically it's like a fight in which the roles were reversed. Tony Ferguson, who looks a lot like Charles Oliveira, was like Charles Oliveira losing the first Nick Lentz fight. No, wait. Charles Oliveira only lost the first one because of a DQ, right?
Yeah, I need him in the head.
Yeah. Well, it was Oliveira himself.
Utterly destroying him.
Yeah. Well, it was a weird thing where Oliveira himself was being the wrestle boxer and Tony Ferguson was being the, I don't know. I don't get this. I don't get the category anymore, Phil. They only had 3 fights. It's not like it's a never-ending series anymore.
Okay. Let's put it to rest then. The real Charles Oliveira and Nick Lentz were the friends we made along the way.
Wow. 2020 was worth it after all. Okay. Moving on. Worst fight. Obviously a hot category for a show like ours. Two of the hosts of which also do the MMA Depressed. This one suggested by @SeñorBigBelly. We have Shevchenko versus Maia. Strong contender. Just going to say that right now. Andre Muniz versus Antonio Arroyo. Phil, I bet you don't know anything about this fight. Do you?
No, I certainly do not.
Yep, because even if you watched it, you forgot it. It's that kind of bad fight. Adesanya versus Romero. If we were doing the Depressed right now, disappointment. That would be our disappointment of the night by far. Holm versus Pennington 2. Somehow worse than the first fight. Marcin Tybura versus Maxim Grishin. Heavyweights. And finally, Cynthia Calvillo versus Jessica Ai. Really also just a trash fight in which no one seemed to know how to take over. One of those where they just had the same shitty exchange over and over for 25 minutes. What do you say, Phil?
It's Adesanya Romero.
Yeah. But Shevchenko Maia, Phil, she's so evil. She did that on purpose. You know?
Oh, because everyone was like, well, at least Maia's aggressive, so it'll be fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't?
It wasn't.
think of how much people thought Adesanya versus Romero was going to be good.
I don't even have to
excited
think.
Everyone was.
Yeah, the truth is that I wasn't excited for Shevchenko Maia, whereas I was really excited for Adesanya Romero. That's a good point. It was really disappointing. It did suck a lot.
Really bad. It's really bad.
It's like a Woodley Thompson 2 level of fight. It's really shitty. So, okay.
Remember when the fight starts and Romero just stands there for like 3 minutes? Everyone's like, what is this strategy?
Yeah, I think that actually makes the whole thing crueler because that made it seem like this is going to be a hilariously bad fight, and then it got boring.
Yeah, then it was just atrocious.
Yeah, I do want, again, I want there to be more room for something like Holm Pennington 2, which was literally the same as their first fight, but somehow more boring. Like that is especially
more of a clear Raquel Pennington win.
Yeah, right. Even more of a robbery. Yeah, that is like, it's very rare when a sequel outdoes its predecessor. And that was a case of that. That was a rare, like Terminator 2. Not arguing that it's better than Terminator, but yeah, it's gotta be Adesanya Romero. Cause nothing was more disappointing and none of these fights were really as bad as that one. And I think also the fact that like Holm Pennington, both of those ladies, like Raquel was mad cause she should have won. But they're kind of boring people, so they just kind of had a boring reaction to it. They're like, all right, that was the same as our first fight. It was the fact that Israel Adesanya knew how bad the fight was immediately afterwards and started blaming other people for it. Like he was feeling very ashamed of what happened in that fight, as he should have.
Yeah, because he'd been talking so much about how he wasn't scared of Romero at all.
Yeah. Comparing himself favorably to Robert Whittaker, comparing himself favorably to Bobby Knuckles, who had two of the greatest fights of all time with Yoel Romero, and then fought the most terrified, timorous fight I've ever seen. So, yep, you guys really earned it. Worst fight, Adesanya Romero, which brings us to our next related category, best bad fight. And these are fights which are bad, but aren't brutal, crushing, boring slogs. Phil, what are our nominees?
We have Ryan Spahn versus Sam Alvey, Maurice Green versus Jean Vellante, Johnny Walker versus Ryan Spahn, Ben Rothwell versus OSP, and Hadis Ibragimov versus Danilo Marquez.
That one, the Ibragimov fight is so close to just being a worst fight contender. Cause really nothing happens. But I think it's the like heavy breathing and look of desperation on Ibragimov's face that really puts it over the top for me and makes it very entertaining. It's a fight in which both guys do nothing so ineffectively that by round 3, they're really tired and they're both still trying really hard, but they both can't be good. So that is a very entertaining sort of one note fight in my opinion. But I don't think it's a top contender. I think we have to give special shout out to Ryan Spahn for literally being in 2 of the funniest worst fights of the year.
We also want, John Vellante against Jake Collier.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, John Vellante also had a stellar year for bad fighting. Fair shout.
I mean, I think the two real standouts hit for me are Maurice Green, John Vellante, and Johnny Walker, Ryan Spahn.
Yeah.
Spahn. That's it.
It's Spahn. Yeah.
Spahn. I think I like Johnny Walker, Ryan Spahn because it is so short, but it's so perfect.
Yeah.
When we were asked to when we were trying to break this fight down, we were just like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's just going to be incredibly dumb.
Yeah.
It was so dumb and it was so good. It was just,
ferociously stupid.
Absolutely clobbering Johnny Walker until Johnny Walker accidentally knocked him out. And it was just tremendous. And then Walker was like, oh, I figured it out now. Look out, light heavyweight division. You know what I'm doing. Just like, what?
This is the process I will carry to the championship. Yeah, this is how
you just almost got murdered by a pretty bad light heavyweight.
Yeah, by like one of the slowest light heavyweights too. Yeah, I think that's a good shout. It's I almost don't know what to say about it. Like, I'm picturing it in my mind right now, and it's just a relentless assault of stupid things happening. So go revisit it. Best bad fight of 2020. Johnny Walker versus Ryan Spawn. All right, next up, one of our favorite.
I think I would put this as I would possibly put this as our last award because I think it's my personal favorite.
Okay. All right, let's do that. We'll save our personal favorite for the end, and we'll move on to actually one of my personal favorites. Actually, this is one to mention. We didn't fill it in. We had last year a best future light heavyweight champion. Was it Jan Blachowicz that we picked as a joke?
Almost certainly, yeah.
That rules. We literally named him best future light heavyweight champion in 2019. And mere months later, he became the light heavyweight champion. So there's really no point discussing nominees. It's just, he did it. He's the champion. Yep. And now he's going to lose to Israel Adesanya. Okay.
Sticking with Jan.
Moving on to the Patrick Wyman Memorial Award for Explosive Muscularity. Always been one of my favorites. Really just like to keep reminding people. Probably at this point we have new listeners who don't know who Patrick Wyman really is. He's completely forgotten, except for his homoerotic love for massive beefcakes in the octagon. And for that reason, we read the following nominees. Impa Kasanganay versus Joaquin Buckley. Michelle Pereira versus Chaos Williams. And Phil has written, boo, because the fight sucked. Abdul Razak Al Hassan versus Chaos Williams. Drew Dober versus Alexander Hernandez. And Marlon Moraes versus Jose Aldo. Two underappreciated beefcakes there.
There's a lot of man in that, that list of contenders.
Stuffed into this category, yeah. Well, what do you say? I mean...
I think, for me, the two standouts... I mean, Michelle Pereira and Chaos Williams, an underrated pick for worst fight of the year.
True.
Especially because it should have been, what that Spawn Walker fight was.
Yep.
It should have been incredibly dumb, and then someone should have gotten their head ripped off.
Yep.
Instead, it was just awful. So I mean, it has to get disqualified just for. I mean, that's not explosive muscularity.
Yeah. Well, is explosive muscularity an award for the results or for the potential? Is it just these guys are hot and they throw hard even if they're missing and not being effective, or do they have to be successfully explosive and muscular?
I think it should be some kind of combination of the two. I think ideally.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, the platonic ideal is obviously is Romero Costa,
right? And before that, we also had Thiago Santos, Jimmy Manuwa.
Yeah,
another legendary fight of extremely potent explosion and muscularity. So yeah, good point.
Yeah, exactly. That atrocious 80s film that you mentioned. Final fight from that should be one of the platonic ideals for this.
Undefeatable is the name. Yes.
Oh yes, that's the one. So I think it might have to be Impa Kasanganay and Joaquin Buckley.
Right.
I mean, that was a muscular and explosive fight. Like, even before the finish, it was actually an extremely entertaining fight.
It really was.
Where they're both just, delivering and taking big shots.
Yep.
And being explosive and muscular and ripped.
I actually think Joaquin Buckley's build adds somewhat to the impressiveness of what he did. Cause he really is he's just a little tank. He's appears to have zero body fat. He's completely shredded and is like this short little dude with much bigger torso than legs. And to see that guy through sheer explosive muscularity leap 3 feet off the ground and land a spinning back kick KO made it extra impressive. And as you said, it was up to that point already a very entertaining fight just by its own merits. So I think I agree. Congratulations, guys. moving on, this one, just to sort of, I think, emphasize how wrong Dr. Wyman is for liking such fights so much. This is the Schlubby Schadenfreude Award, which is my title, but this is a category suggested by @KelLovesOrangeSoda, who asked for a best normal beats athlete performance. So what's the best one where the explosively muscular fighter was felled by a much schlubbier counterpart? Phil, our nominees.
We have Brett Johns versus Montel Jackson. Julian Rosa strangling Sean Woodson. Neil Dariush seeing red against Drakkar Klose. Billy Quarantillo batters the vile Carlisle. And Ed Herman versus Mike Rodriguez.
You can see I've really found as many opportunities as possible to stick Ed Herman versus Mike Rodriguez in here. It's like the third time.
Me. I might have added that one in.
Yeah?
Whilst we were talking about it in other... Yeah.
I mean, it's a good choice. It's kind of a hotly contested category.
I think it is, yeah.
Because my first immediate thought was a fight I really enjoyed for the Schadenfreude, for the catharsis, Brett Johns versus Montel Jackson.
That is also my initial pick as well.
Yeah, because Brett Johns is like, it's really just athleticism that I think has made him look like he's destined to be a fringe contender at most in the UFC. Where otherwise he has like a really well-rounded game and has just been like not quite fast enough, not quite durable enough, not quite strong enough against enough guys. And that was, all of those things were absolutely the case. Montel Jackson is huge. He has like gigantic hands. He hits really hard. And this is the guy who was able to repeatedly just sort of effortlessly deny Ricky Simone's takedown attempts by just peeling his hands off of his legs. And Brett Johns like fought a perfect fight. Like this one honestly should also probably be in the best game plan award.
I was thinking that as well.
Yeah. So really like pure strategy, allowed Brett Johns to overcome vast physical disadvantages. So that was my first thought. But the other one that's a hot contender for me, Beneil Dariush. Like Drakkar Klose is like such a Patrick Wyman fighter. He has like a really shallow game, but he's like a huge muscle-bound freak for the division. And Beneil Dariush has no ass. That's his defining characteristic. He's not even athletic enough to deserve an ass. And he smashed Drakkar Klose after getting hurt, right? Like, he really saw red. He said afterwards something like, in his like sweet high voice, he was like, yeah, I just, I don't know what comes over me. But I go to another place and my opponent, instead of their face, I see a big ham hock and I just go insane and start tearing them to pieces. I'm sorry. That's what he said after killing Drakkar Klose. Also, without Joaquin Buckley, that might be best knockout of the year.
Oh yeah.
What an incredible, aesthetically pleasing knockout that was. So,
I've said this before, I still don't think Beneil Dariush is like a super bad athlete. I just don't think he's standout anywhere.
No, he's average. You're right. He's not.
I think Drakkar Klose is particularly a standout athlete. I just think he's incredibly, he's mostly just really tough.
Drakkar Klose?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's just pretty strong and tough, but he's also super slow.
Okay. It's not as extreme as the physical gulf in Johns Jackson. No.
Yeah, Johns Jackson is a huge physical gulf.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, Ed Herman, Mike Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
Julian Erosa, Sean Woodson is an interesting one.
Yeah, because I don't think Sean Woodson is like that much of an athlete, but he has a freakish frame. He's very quick for his size. And Julian Erosa is just like in every metric a little too average. He is what our sworn enemy Zane Simon likes to call a quadruple A fighter. He's like just in every category, not quite UFC caliber. And he had to go through hellfire to get that win. And it's a great fight too. So,
I think I'd probably go with my initial action. I think Brett Johns, Montel Jackson, that's one of those ones where I was just like, how's this guy winning?
super feel-good performance. It was really weirdly uplifting to see him overcome that matchup through sheer smarts and grit. So yeah, congratulations, Brett, man. You earned it, you crazy Welsh bastard. Finally, I think that brings us to our final category, the Laugh Out Loud Pure Entertainment Fighter of the Year. I don't feel like, for whatever reason, even though this was a great year for my fighters, Cheeto Vera had good moments, Derek Brunson had good moments, John Blachowicz is the light heavyweight champion, Kevin Holland knocked out Jacare Souza from his back. Some of these people will be mentioned in these nominees. But I do have a feeling we will never get any, the 2 years prior, we had Cody Garbrandt getting knocked out 3 times in a row the exact same way. Few things will ever be funnier than that. The way I felt watching the 3rd straight Cody Garbrandt KO loss was utter glee. I don't think I can replicate it. And then I think last year was Jared Brooks, right?
Yes.
Landing on his own head.
The year before that, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I might have that reversed. So I don't know. Can you find anyone among these nominees, as you read them, please, Phil, that comes close to that for just sheer hilarity? Anyway, the nominees.
I can. But let's hit the nominees.
Mm-hmm.
John Vellante, Kevin Holland, Juan Cutelaba, Alexei Oleinik, Kenzie Dunn, and Ryan Spahn.
It's not a weak field. Not by any stretch.
I think it's a very strong field.
Yeah.
Let's think of what because many of these people have more than one achievement this year.
True.
Jean Vellante, he gave us Tapping to Fatness.
Which is very
He
funny.
also gave us a match where he, as a fat heavyweight, fought a much fatter middleweight.
Okay. When you put it like that, just looking, I think that what really sold that for me is that I had just finished Google image searching fat Jake Collier when you started describing it. It kind of reminded me how funny it was to watch. Okay.
I mean, Kevin Holland.
His pictures look like this UFC profile picture looks like he has just been caught stealing fruit snacks from the pantry. He looks ashamed of himself for being this fat. Oh, God damn it. Okay. All right. Go on. Sorry.
I mean, Kevin Holland, what more is there to be said about this man?
Yeah.
Finished a fight with breakdancing. He coached Joaquin Buckley to being the viral sensation of 20.
Oh, yeah.
He had one of the most cathartic, yet also somehow incredibly predictable fights with Darren Stewart.
Yep.
Where we literally said before the fight, Kevin Holland should have this well in hand unless he freaks out Darren Stewart so much that Darren Stewart goes nuts in the 3rd round.
And he was just too damn successful early. It also had one of the best Kevin Holland. No, the Buckley one had one of the best Kevin Holland getting hit in the balls sequences, which is a really popular recurring bit throughout his career. Just the things he says after getting hit in the dick. And him in a completely silent UFC Apex arena being I want to use it in the future, so please don't hit me there again, please. I want to have kids, just saying all this shit to a completely mystified Joaquin Buckley. That's pretty good. Maybe I'm just inured to how great and funny Kevin Holland is. He's given so many gifts this year. He literally said, "I swear I had a dream about this," 15 seconds before KOing Jacare Souza with a breakdancing move. Okay. I don't want to overlook the man. You're right. He's a legend.
Complaining about how strong, deliberately clinching up with Darren Stewart and then complaining about how strong he was.
Yeah. Oh, he's strong. Yeah. There's so many good moments. Maybe too much of a good moment.
Next, we have Iwan Cutelaba.
Yeah.
And Ion Cutelaba has had a hell of a 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, once again, I cannot express how amazing it is that someone with their body posture managed to convince an MMA referee to stop a fight.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I think I only just put together the fact that, like, this is a sport where you get way more late stoppages than early stoppages anyway.
You have to be murdered to get to have an MMA fight stopped.
I think I only just now fully appreciated that context. That it was an MMA ref that he persuaded. Yeah. His acting was that good.
He's literally maybe the greatest actor.
Yeah.
But like he could be the most charismatic actor the stage has ever seen. Instead, he's out here like trying to fight people.
I'm imagining now a sort of like an impromptu acting contest between Ion Cutelaba and Daniel Day-Lewis, in which Daniel Day-Lewis delivers 3 lines of dialogue before Ion Cutelaba just starts beating his ass. Yeah, really. You know what? Also, this adds more to it. That was so funny, and the rematch like was never going to be able to live up to it. That it sort of obscures how just singularly funny the rematch itself was.
Right.
Like the first fight,
they battled so much to get this pointless rematch going. To the extent that it might actually be this year's Nick Lenz versus Charles Oliveira. But of hopeless, pointless rematches that everyone knows one guy's going to win.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Maybe that's what the Oliveira Nick Lenz award becomes in future, so that it makes more sense.
They just chase a rematch there. Everyone's like, one guy is way better. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But it's the fact that he just desperately went after Ankalaev.
He learned nothing.
But also that he got knocked out trying to pimp slap him.
Yes. Like full wind up.
Trying to deliver a non-spinning back fist.
He tried to put the fucking rings on him. There was also a moment where he was like doing like a quadruple spinning attack and he got knocked down in the middle of it. Like there are a lot of funny moments in that fight. Almost the fact that the first was so funny weakened the impact of those moments, but it is a very funny performance. Okay.
We have obviously Alexei Oleinik, who gave us just like amazing striking performances against Derek Lewis and Fabricio Verdum.
Yep.
Basically terrifying both of them off striking with him.
Yeah. The bungalow brawler.
Both of them were just like, no, I cannot handle this man. He is too much for me on the feet.
Yeah. Also, just something about Oleinik looking like a sort of an unfrozen ape adds to the hilarity of watching him punch the way he does with his weirdly long arms. Mackenzie Dern.
Yep. Underrated amount of quality moments. Again, the double trouble we saw, the foul. Also her incredibly cunning luring of Randa Marcos into her guard.
Reverse engineering her K1 kickboxing game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, beautiful. Anything else?
Ryan Spahn obviously gave us 2 absolute classics against Walker and Alvey.
2 utterly dire fights. Ryan Spahn is like, I think he will be, for as long as his UFC career goes on, like a real dark horse for just entertainingly bad fighter. Cause like there's something, I think you have to see more than one Ryan Spahn fight before you start to appreciate how profoundly not that good he is. Cause he's not bad either.
I was just thinking, like, I need to see him fight Devin Clark, and then I was like, I looked it up, and I was like, he has like 2 fights ago.
Oh my god. You just heard me forgetting they'd already fought in real time. Yeah, there is something, I think the longer he fights, the more power each performance will gain. Where you're just like, wow, he did it again. Yet another utterly mediocre showing from Ryan Spahn. So that is something special. It makes him unique. it kind of has to be Iwan Kutalaba.
Much as I love Kevin Holland, Iwan Kutalaba went above and beyond this year.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin Holland is the
sheer... It's the fact that he convinced the guy he convinced an MMA ref the fight was over. And that he was and that he is just naturally the most angry man in the world.
Yeah.
He was just like, what have I done?
He was...
Curse my thespian abilities. Never wanted them.
He swore revenge against his childhood acting coach in that moment. And I also he spent all that time when they were trying the Oliveira Lentz style, we have to rematch for no reason. He spent all that time being that mad.
Yes.
I just know that this guy got COVID while they were trying to set that matchup up. And I just know he was sitting in a hospital bed, in a sick bed, just steaming, thinking about Magomed Ankalaev. He was so mad that he wasn't going to get his revenge, which turned out to be him fighting really badly and losing. So yeah, congratulations, Iwan. I thought when you got to the UFC, you were a fighter with potential. I thought you were going to grow and really turn into something. And instead, you've gone completely the opposite direction. And I commend you for that. You've not gotten better at all. You've just gotten funnier. 2020 was a real success for that mission. And, I think this was a successful Handies, Phil. A very long one. What have we been on here for? 3 hours almost? So extra long episode of Heavy Hands. I hope many of you enjoyed it and felt that a long and punishing year with a similarly punishing UFC schedule has made it worthwhile in bringing you to this moment. I enjoyed it, Phil. I don't know about you.
You did. Yeah. It's getting extremely late where I am, though, and I am starting to fade after many Handies given out.
Yes, Phil is losing stamina rapidly. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is spongy and bruised. And so the 2020 Handies are now coming to an end. Find us on social media. Phil is at Evil Greg Jackson. You can find me at Boxing Bush, BUSCH. Make sure to check out the Heavy Hands Patreon. Tell your friends, buy a shirt. Search Heavy Hands on Redbubble and buy a shirt. God damn it. And we will talk to you. Well, normally I get to say next year, but it's already next year. We're doing this in January. So we'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands. My God, I'm tired.